This is the Best of the Bravest Nationwide Edition. Small world, because it's funny. One of the main sponsors of this program, of which you'll hear from in a moment, is the reason why myself and tonight's guest, who I'll introduce momentarily, are talking this evening. And it's funny because, like I said, the fire service is big, but it's small. There's so many different connections, and you're talking with the guest off there, even a police connection. There's a name I know in ESU that I'm trying to get on this program. It turns out that gentleman knows him and is good friends with said individual from the emergency service unit. So really the emergency service community in general, between the police and fire, especially in this part of the country, it's big, but it's small. Everybody knows everybody, or at least knows of that person. On that note, we welcome you back to episode 394 of the Mike the New Haven podcast, as we continue the march to 400 and working on securing a big guest for that episode. If you haven't checked out the previous episode, 393, part 2, with returning guest, retired NYPD Detective George Sickler, we hit on a different array of topics. Been covered them about an hour and so, and it was a good show. Very, very good to have him back on the program and pick up where we left off, especially some of the newer projects that George has had on. Won't keep my guest waiting too long, so we'll run a couple of ads. And like I said, since it's Brett King and Granite State Fire Helmets that helped us get in touch, we're going to run his ad first tonight. Hey there, firefighters and fire buffs. If you're tuning in to the Mike the New Haven podcast, you know the value of reliable gear. At Granite State Fire Helmets, we're proud to introduce the TL2, our premium leather Phoenix fire helmet. The TL2 is all about comfort, durability, and that timeless style you trust. And here's the best part. All in-stock inventory usually ships within 24 hours, so you'll have it in your hands in no time. Plus, our company is proudly owned and operated by firemen, so you know we've got your back and understand exactly what you need out there on the front lines. So don't wait. Gear up with the TL2 today. Granite State Fire Helmets, where tradition meets innovation, and where firemen have you covered. Again, special thanks to Chief King there for getting myself and my guest, who will introduce momentarily, in touch. And of course, we have our friend Vince from Tuff. Firehouse floors take a beating. Rigs rolling in, gear drop down, chemicals and spills every single day. That's why departments nationwide are choosing Tuff. Tuff epoxy floors are built for fire stations. Slip resistant, chemical resistant, easy to clean, and tough enough to handle anything the job throws at them. It's more than just a floor. It's a safer, sharper, and more professional foundation for your house. And here's the bonus. Tuff is an authorized dealer for Groves. So if gear racks, PPE extractors, or dryers are what you're after, you'll find them here. Heavy discounts apply for Getting Salty listeners. So install an Tuff floor and get Groves products at dealer cost. Tuff, built for firefighters, built to last. You'll hear from Billy Ryan a little bit later before we get to the rapid fire. My next guest is a veteran of both the American Fire Service and also United States Army, whose career touched nearly every corner of emergency operations, training and national fire service leadership. From Vietnam to Jersey City's busiest fire companies, from department chief officer roles to shaping hands-on training for thousands across the country, his impact has been felt on the fire ground, in the classroom, and throughout the national fire service community. And that, for another volume 8 of the Best of the Bravest Nationwide Edition, retired out of the Jersey City, New Jersey Fire Department, is Deputy Chief Robert Butch Cobb, who joins us this evening. Chief, great to finally connect with you, and again, very much looking forward to this program. Welcome.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. I've been looking forward to this also. Speaking with Brett, he said, "I got to get you on this." He goes, "This is a number one show." So I'm happy to be here and looking forward to what goes on.
Absolutely. And we'll dive into it. Before I get to everything that enveloped your career, both abroad, of course, in the military, and of course, stateside with the fire service, just tell me about where you grew up.
I grew up, I was born in Jersey City, long time ago, 1948, in Christ Hospital. We moved to what was considered the suburbs, up a little bit north of Jersey City, to Union City, New Jersey. We left there in, I think, 56, 57, moved to Dumont, New Jersey, and that's when my dad got involved with the volunteers, and that I was hooked. I was actually hooked when we were in Union City because he played softball for a lot of the fire department teams, but it's a whole nother story. So went to Dumont. We were in Dumont for quite a long time. from my 57, I guess 58 to 1979, I moved to West Milford, New Jersey, up by Greenwood Lake on the New York State border, and lived there for 31 years, raised a family. I have 2 grown kids and 4 grandkids. And life after West Milford, New Jersey, is Goodyear, Arizona. I followed my 3 grandsons out here. They live right down the block. So,
Oh, nice.
yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, it's freezing cold over here. So now, listen, I have something against you because you're enjoying a heck of a lot nicer climate right now than I am in good old Connecticut. We know how brutal these tri-state New England winters can be. But nevertheless, just to kind of peel it back a bit. So your father was around the fire service from what it sounds like. And I imagine that influenced your path to say, maybe, I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong. I think this is something I want to do when I grow up.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a great influence. He wanted to be a fireman. He was in the U.S. Navy during World War II, got injured, came back, and couldn't pass the physical. He eventually became 100% disabled from his service in the Navy. Interesting quick story. Before my dad enlisted in the Navy, he was being sought after by the New York Yankees and the Brooklyn Dodgers. He got an invite to try out for the Yankees. I have the letter still from the president of the Yankees back in, I guess it was 41.
Wow.
And then he was a real superstar in baseball throughout Hudson County, where he went to high school. And then these 2 sports writers got a hold of his mom, my grandmother, and got him an invite to the Dodger tryout up in North Hudson Park. And he did really well for the Yankees. They invited him to Yankee Stadium for a second tryout. They gave him a couple bucks for the trolley and lunch. I think it was like $1.95. But he might have been on his way. But when World War II broke out, all 4 Cobb brothers enlisted. And there was no hesitation, and when he came back, he just wasn't physically able to do that. Couldn't become a fireman. So him and my grandmother opened up an embroidery shop in Union City, which at the time was the embroidery capital of the world, believe it or not. There's a big sign when you're headed into the Lincoln Tunnel. It still says Union City, the embroidery capital of the world. And of course, that got taken over, by European companies. But he was always hanging out with firemen, career firemen. He was always in the firehouse directly across from us. There was a Weehawken firehouse. He knew everybody there. Went to his softball games. They were all firemen. He dragged me down to the corner bar, next tavern. They were all firemen in there. And so that was, he wanted to, but it just didn't happen. But he did get into the volunteers. He was able to pass that physical, when we moved to Dumont. And the rest is history. We hung out in the firehouse. And I've said this before, but when I was a little kid, I cleaned and shined a lot of brass. So, you may well know the hose had brass couplings, and the volleys, they wanted them spit shine. So
right.
So anyway, I sort of became a mascot. It was before the junior fireman phase, but I hung out there a lot. And once I got the taste, that was it. I just that's the only thing I look forward to.
Absolutely, as we'll dive into tonight. Before that came the Army. And again, your father was involved in that too. Was he a big influence in that regard in terms of your decision to enlist?
Well, I grew up amongst them. And except for my dad, the other 4 all did 20 plus in the service, Air Force or Army. My real hero was my Uncle Frank. He retired. I think he was a sergeant major or first sergeant. They never told many stories, but my Uncle Frank had just, a load of commendations on his uniform. I used to have my dad drop me off at Fort Dix on the weekend sometimes just to hang out with him. So that was kind of in my blood. Yeah, that was kind of in my blood. And when I got out of high school, I just wasn't sure I wanted to go to college. I didn't want my parents to waste the money. So I did the next best thing. I went down, I saw Sergeant Glenn in Bergenfield, New Jersey. He said, I want to sign up 3 years. I volunteered to go to Vietnam. And From that though, Mike, it probably is what helped me begin my career, because when I came back from Vietnam, being a combat veteran, New Jersey had a law where when you came back from any war, you got absolute preference on a civil service test. All you had to do was get a 70, and your name went to the top of the list.
Oh wow!
So that 366 days I spent there was, I guess, well worth it, depending how you look at it. But I think that's not that I wouldn't have got on a job, but I got on pretty quick.
I was gonna say, yeah, especially after that experience. So just being overseas over there, did a couple tours over there. What was that like, and how do you think your experience over there shaped your approach to the fire service?
Well, what I learned in the Army, especially being in a war zone, it kind of, if you want to put it side by side with going to a fire and having all that chaos to work within, and to try to make everything work, the Army did a wonderful job. I learned to take orders. Maybe didn't necessarily know why I was doing something. They weren't really good explaining everything, but I learned to take orders. I learned the buddy system. I learned that the guy next to you could save your life. You could save his life. All those things kind of matched up to when I got to the fire service.
Right.
It was kind of equal, but probably built up a little resilience too, not knowing it, because every mission that we went on was different than the one before it, just like going to a fire. I mean, I don't know anybody that went to the same exact fire, one after another. It was the same thing. Every mission we went, we learned something. And if you didn't learn it, shame on you. The Army put the training into me. The more training you did, the better you got at something. And if you're going off to war, you better be the best of the best. And so those kind of traits, those things, I brought back to the fire service, and it was easy back then. It's a little bit harder now, but a lot of kids back from Iraq and Afghanistan, they understand that, and I think that's what makes a lot of the big city departments work, because you got that big influx of military back in, and I think that helps immensely. But yeah, I learned a lot that I carried over to the fire service from the military.
Well, a lot of longtime viewers of this program have heard me say it before. I think if you're going to end up in a police academy or a fire academy, if you have military experience and you've gone through the basic training for whatever the branch is, a police academy or a fire academy is a walk in the park compared to that. Yeah. And that's not to say it's easy, but compared to United States military training, it's easier to navigate because you know what to expect, and it's a lot of the same. Aspects in terms of values, in terms of, like you said, learning to follow orders, and a lot of the instincts that are going to have to be beaten into you over the course of the training, however long that training may be. Now, before Jersey City came, Weehawken actually got on there as a career guy. You were a volley for a long time, of course, in Dumont, but you first became a career guy in Weehawken until you made the leap to Jersey City and lateraled in 75. So those 3 years in Weehawken, what was the fire duty like? Was it substantial, minimal, and somewhere in the middle?
It was minimal, to tell you the truth. Okay. The fires, I went to one fire really in Weehawken. The rest of them were mutual aid to Union City, North Bergen. We went down to Hoboken quite often. So I did go to fires. We did have some really good jobs, but not in Weehawken itself. Weehawken was a really small department. There were only 12 of us, including the dispatcher, because one of us had to be the dispatcher. So there were 12 of us on a shift, and sometimes even less than that. And when I think back at some of the things that I did, that I had to do, and I'll give you one quick example. I went to Truck 222, or Truck 2, and there were weeks when the captain, Andy Scott, sat next to me. I drove, and that was it. And it was almost like when we got to something, most of our fires with mutual aid was coming right away, but Andy would say, we went in different directions, and he would just say to me, don't get hurt, and I'll meet you back here later. I mean, that's, but we made it work. I know people would say, you're out of your mind. Why would you do something like that? But, there are so many departments around this country that don't have the minimum manning. Forget the NFPA. They barely have enough to get out the door, but they get the job done. And you know what? That's really the backbone of the fire service. You're going to get the job done, whether you're 4 on the rig or 3 on the rig or 2 on the rig. You're going to get something done. You're going to give it a try. So Weehawken was an eye opener. I had basic. There was no firefighter 1 or 2 back then. It was called basic firefighter. I took in Bergen County as a volley. So when I went there, I worked days, got to know the equipment. They had 3 engines and a ladder. And then my deputy chief running a shift, he took me down to the waterfront, and there was some vacant buildings down there, and they lit some 55-gallon drums on fire, and it could have been anything in there, wood, tires,
Who knows?
And they dropped the charged hose line, and it was sort of like, a couple guys will follow you in, but you get in there and put that fire out. So, I went in and, they had trained me on the Scott pack, but it was the same that I had with the volleys. And I went in with the line, and, I knocked down these 2 or 3 barrels, and, the smoke was banked down to your toes. I came back out, tried not to smile because it was kind of fun. They thought I was going to take it a little bit more serious, but I came out of that day. And the next day, I was on a job in Weehawken about 8 or 9 days, and I started a shift the next day. They said, "Okay, you passed. You can go on a shift." So that was different. I mean, you're talking 72, so it was different, but it was, they tested me and I passed, and next thing I know, I was on a fire truck.
And I mean, there you go. And that was 3 years of your career on the career side, that is.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, it was a different fire service back then, to say the least. I mean, now between EMS and other aspects of the fire service that, companies can respond to now, it's up the call numbers dramatically. If you were a busy department, you got even busier. If you were a middle of the road department, you turned into a really busy one because of all the EMS that most departments around the country are doing, except for a few. So back then, though, that wasn't the case in 72, 73. I mean, it was either a really bad MVA or a box, I assume, in Weehawken that you were going to.
That's it. Yeah, and that carried it to Jersey City also. But yeah, Weehawken, that was it. If we got a lot of pull boxes. Some of the pull boxes were fires, the car fire, rubbish fires, smoke from a building. There was no cell phones back then.
Right. And pull box was a cell phone.
Yeah. One of the interesting things, I volunteered a couple of times to be the dispatcher, and they taught me how to do it. And it had the big console. And you would set up the box bells, and then you'd hit the hammer, and the gong would go off, and that's how And we had, back then we had the the ticket tape. The box would come in, and you look and double check it, and look up and say, okay, Park Avenue, 46th Street, closest box. So we kind of knew where we were going to, and then they give us the report on the radio. So I kind of enjoyed that up there. I was above the police station. It kind of locked you in. Had a 6 o'clock radio test with the Port Authority because the tunnel was in Weehawken. We test with them and make sure that they were awake, and I was awake. And if somebody called, I'd run over to that console. I'd look in the card. It would say, box 631. I set up 631, hit the plunger. And the gongs in the firehouse were really loud. I mean, they'd rocket you out of bed and give it over the radio. I enjoyed that. I wouldn't say enjoyed it, but it was a part that I wanted to see and do. So, anytime I had a chance to do something I hadn't done before, I grasped that. And that was my whole career. Any opportunity I got, I took. Well,
half the battle is willingness, and if there's a willingness there, and I go back to something that Bob Gallione from FDNY Rescue 2 famously said, and I'm going to clean it up a little bit for the program. All you got to have is heart and guts. Everything else we can teach you. If there's a heart there and there's a willingness to learn, well, that's half the battle. That's going to take you a long way as it is. Everything else will come to you. We're talking retired Deputy Chief Butch Cobb here on the Mike the New Haven podcast. This is Volume 8 of the Best of the Bravest Nationwide Edition. Mikey Squad Company 921. I see your question. I think that's Mike Thomas. He's asking, just before we continue, were you on the TV show The Bravest, were you the incident commander on the church fire down the street from Squad Company 4 and Rescue 1?
Yes, I was working in Mutual in Battalion 4 when that came in. I was the incident commander at the beginning. With the way Jersey City was set up, you got 4-2 to rescue and 2 chiefs, the battalion and the deputy. Deputy started out on every box, so I knew the deputy, Timmy Carney, was coming. But for the first 5, 6, 7 minutes, it was me. I think I got off a third alarm before he showed up, and the squad got in with the crazy guys on Squad 4. They took a 2.5 in the front door, and this thing was off and running. They came out of their own accord a few seconds before I had the hose yanked out to get them out. But definitely was the incident commander at the beginning, and then of course handed it off to the deputy. And It went to, I think, 4 alarms plus and got into a couple buildings. But that was an interesting fire, Mike. I don't know if you know it or not, but we rescued a casket from inside.
No.
Rescue one. Yeah, we took a chance, and the family and the minister lived next door. He said, the funeral's tomorrow morning, and the guy's in the casket. And the guys from the rescue went in and kind of lassoed it and dragged it out.
There you go. There you go. I mean, again, I'm glad. That led to a great story there. So thanks, Mike, for that question.
Yeah.
He's recalling a TV show from which a lot of clips you saw tonight in the opening I took from. That was a great show on television in like the late 90s, early 2000s. They followed the FDNY around. They followed Boston around as well. Really, really good show. Hello to everybody else in the chat. John Costello, Joe Maliga, Chris Ebden, Patty Pogan, another great legendary E-man who's been on the show before, my man Darren Phillips, in addition to Mike Thomas, who just had that great question. So picking up where we left off, fast forward a few years, like we said, go over to Jersey City in 75. Again, it's a busier city. It's a larger city. Was that what attracted you to it?
Yeah, absolutely. When I took the test way back when, there was no residency requirement, and there were like 12 cities hiring, and you could check off whatever box you wanted. So Weehawken was one of them. They called me first, and I took that while I waited. They knew early on I was going to be temporary in Weehawken. They just sensed. Actually, Chief Kale, Chief of Department, what a great guy. He was. I loved him. He was kind of a little bit of a mentor, but he knew I wasn't staying, and he didn't want me to. He just knew I wanted to move on. So the second call I got was from Ridgewood, New Jersey. I went there. I passed on that, and then I was waiting for Newark or Jersey City. I had taken a New York City test. I was covering all my bases, and Jersey City called. But back then, 75. Jersey City was sort of like the extra borough. I mean, I have some of my FDNY friends, and I still have a lot of them. They looked at Jersey City as the extra borough. I mean, what they did, we did. They had their war years, we had our war years. Everything that happened there trickles over to us. So I knew a lot about Newark and Jersey City, but as soon as I got the call from Jersey City on a Friday. I left Weehawken and started Jersey City on a Monday. So that's how quick that happened. And I couldn't have been happier. And then New York City called. I was in Jersey City maybe a year, and New York City called. And my dad said to me, "How many more fires you want to go to?" Because he knew, we had 2 and 3 a day sometimes, and sometimes more. But so I passed on and stayed in Jersey City. I'm glad I did. It was a great department. It has stayed the same in many respects. They're kind of I always call it they're an anomaly because they only cover about 14 square miles. And right now, I think they got 23, 24 companies and almost 700 firemen covering that little area. Yeah. It's really strange. But, back then, that's all they did. They were doing a lot of fire activity. Somebody said to me there were 5,000 or 6,000 vacant buildings, and most of them in the south end of the city. So I didn't hesitate. When that happened, and that was kind of a dream come true for me.
Did you have to go through an academy again, or they just took you straight lateral? Yes.
No, there was no such thing as lateral. They didn't want to hear it. We even had a guy that had been through the New York City Academy. Came over. Wow. Yeah, and they didn't care. We went through the whole, whatever it was, 12 weeks, whatever. I mean, it was all firefighting. There was no EMS or anything back then. But yeah, the only thing they let Mike and I do, Mike Turpak and I do, if we had to move a fire truck, they trusted us to move a fire truck. If we had to move it and reposition it at a training, at a drill or something. But other than that, from scratch, and I'm glad they did, because you know what? Weehawken wasn't Jersey City. They did things with what they had. New York City, 5, 6, 7 firefighters on a rig. They do it their way, and Jersey City had. I'm glad I learned their way. It was interesting. It was interesting, and I enjoyed it. The Proby school was good. It was hard. There was nothing easy about it.
Oh, absolutely. And the reward at the end of the day, and this is a feeling I long for and very much want in my life pretty soon. Yeah. The reward at the end of the day is wonderful. It's a pot of gold, so to speak. And, off begins the magic carpet ride, which in your case was all those years in Jersey City. Now, did you start at Engine 20 or did that come later?
No, that came I came out of Proby School and went to Engine 1, which was right down
Okay.
on the waterfront. And I think they figured this kid came from Weehawken, and I'd been to a couple pier fires. So they figured, well, maybe he knows a little bit about, but I went to Engine 1, but now you wouldn't call it a busy company compared to everybody else, but it was busy. We had vacant buildings from Morgan Street. We were about maybe a quarter mile from the Holland Tunnel. There were vacant buildings on both sides of the street all the way down. I mean, now it's all high rises and whatnot, but it was all abandoned railroad buildings and 2- and 3-story bricks and frames and vacant. And it wasn't unusual, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock when the kids got out, we'd run down that street for a box and fire out 2 or 3 windows. And that was the norm. But I sat in that firehouse at Engine 1, listening to the south end of the city. Now, I'm going to tell you something that I thought was kind of silly. You're going to think it's kind of crazy, but I went through the entire box, the Rolodex box book, looking at every box in Jersey City, and I found out that Engine 20 was assigned on every alarm. The box book went up to 4 alarms, and Engine 20 was on every alarm. If you didn't go on the first, and it was the second you went. It was, all the way to the fourth. So if it was a big fire, you always went. And the other thing about Engine 20 was they didn't relocate. So you never left your area. So I said, well, that's where I want to go. And I got very fortunate. I went from Engine 1 to Engine 4. I swapped with the senior guy who wanted to come down to Engine 1. I went to Engine 4. They were really busy. But it was still back step, old American La France. They bought 2 of them from, I think from an airport somewhere, because it had this big turret on it and a big foam tank. This is like 75, 76. But the jump seat was so small you couldn't get your air pack on, so we stayed on the back step. And yeah, that was a thrill. But that was good. We Engine 4 went all over the city. That was good. But I waited until the bids came out. The bids came out in September. In other words, all the openings got posted, and you could bid for a spot, and you got 1 point for each year you were on a job. So it was, if you had a lot of time, you could probably go anywhere. But I looked, and it was spot opened, and I called down there, and they said, hey, listen, if you can get it, be my guest. And I was lucky. I got the spot. I was on Engine 20, and I fit right in. Everybody there was cut from the same piece of cloth, because you were all there for one reason, and it's what they did. And we had the smallest first due area, but we probably got in first due to more things than everybody else down in our battalion. And when I went over to the truck, and when I went to 5 truck, an opening happened in 5 trucks. I just crossed the floor. But the guy who left 5 truck was Dennis O'Neill.
Right.
He got promoted to lieutenant, and the spot opened up, and I just slid over to the floor. They let me do that. So, and then he went on, he went all the way up to chief of department for a while, acting chief of department for a while. And then, of course, he became the deputy U.S. I forget the end of it. Anyway, he was the head of the U.S. Fire Academy, and he became the deputy U.S. Fire Administrator. And but I replaced him when he got made lieutenant. So he had some career, and he was a tremendous mentor of mine too. I owe him a lot. But that's the story with him. He left, and I got the spot. Tiller, American La France, stick shift Tiller.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the thing too. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Chief.
No, I said that was kind of fun too. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that was the thing too, like working in an environment like that where you're constantly on the go and there's very little downtime. Training's great. Training's needed in the fire service. Certainly you're a proponent of that. But back then, not to diminish whatever training your officer was doing on the side when there was an opportunity to. That was your training too, because there's nothing like the real thing. And to do it time and time and time again, like you guys were doing it in Jersey City during that era. And like you said, the FDNY with their own warriors, it bred the best firemen of that era because they were so used to doing it all the time. After a while, it became second nature. And there's things you pick up with each box. And again, like I mentioned before, I love something either Bobby Gallione or Rocky LaRocco said a while ago, and the same is true of Jersey City. You could have went to a box at 6:30 in the evening, messed something up. By 8 o'clock that night, the next one, you fixed your mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it happened by us too. I mean, we would get cut at a similar building, and or we had a building fire, and then we'd get a similar one maybe later that night. and we make a correction. Maybe we were short a half a length, or maybe the hydrant was closer than we thought. Little things, forcible entry. Just little things that you can change and say, hey, I think it would be better if we use this. We use this tool, or a different stretch. But it was, Jersey City was. I don't think many cities do this, but when we pulled up on the engine, we dropped the tank. The first two engines didn't run to the hydrant unless it was right there. We didn't run to the hydrant. You went in with the line, dropped the tank, second engine fed you, and I can't tell you how many fires we put out. I mean, rooms of fire with 500 gallons of water, getting right on top of it. Yeah, it's surprising. In one of my classes, I did with Johnny Salka. It was called "Experience is Our Science." We kind of reversed it. Not that we're anti-science, but it was one of the things we talked about. If you're not going to use that 500 gallons, why do you have it? For a car fire, for a garbage fire?
Right.
You have to know. You have to learn things like 500 gallons of water makes like 400,000 gallons of steam. So you have to know things like that. And I'll tell you, we got so used to it. You could have a couple rooms, go in there and drop the tank. And the chauffeur would call you and say, "Listen, I'm down to a quarter." So you had to start thinking a little bit. But small city, 4 engines, 2 trucks on a box, you're gonna get a fee pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't see that as I traveled around the country, with my training company or with ISO. Very seldom see an engine pull up and drop that tank, but just some sidebar to that.
Well, let's get into that sidebar real quick, because I was going to ask about the building layout back then, but we can kind of deviate a little bit and go down, because it depends on the place. I'm not going to name specific departments, but usually in most places you see the engine pull past the structure, drop a couple lines out the back. The hydrant guy or girl wraps a couple lines around the hydrant, makes the hydrant, and then they get off and running. This isn't to diminish the importance of the hydrant, but you bring up an interesting point. So what is it? I mean, the tank is invaluable. Like you said, it's good to use it. Otherwise, why have it? But what's the middle line for you between making the hydrant if you can versus relying on the tank if you can?
If you pulled up to the building, obviously you're going to pull a little bit past it. We were big on truck work. We'd like to get 2 trucks really close. Yep. But if you pulled up 2 or 3 car lengths and you could see the hydrant, or if you knew the hydrant, if you knew your area, which most of the chauffeurs knew where everything was, you would go the extra. And I can't say it was 50 yards or 25 yards. If it was right there, because there were no pre-connects on any engine in Jersey City. To this day, I don't think there's any. It might be a couple for a car fire or something, but we stretched off the back. The officer had to know, grab a few folds, and the chauffeur would go around the back and just, he'd pull off until the line got in there and the officer called. And, so if you had to stretch an extra couple lengths off the back, so be it. But I would say 90% of the time, maybe more than 90% of the time, we dropped the tank and ran in the building. Now, obviously, if it's a commercial building, and you have to make that decision. But most of what we got, a couple of rooms, listen, we've had some really big stuff, and you'd be surprised. I mean, if you don't practice with it, if you don't see how it works, you're not going to do it. You'd be afraid to do it. But Jersey City was doing that when I got there, and I loved it. Boy, you talk about quick attacks. They would pull up, drop the line, drop the tank, and the water was there, and we just knocked the hell out of it. And if it didn't quite go out, we could back out a little bit, maybe close the door. That second line was right behind us, though. That second engine in, they're grabbing a line off of our rig. As the chauffeur's got the feed. So it just works. It worked. I know I've said this at other programs, doing strategy and tactics, and people, you're out of your freaking mind. We'd never do that. Well, it wouldn't work in your department, I guess. And the thing, I used to see some departments, fair-sized career departments, three people on a rig, and drop a guy at the hydrant to wrap the hydrant and hook it up. And so now you have 2 firemen, pulling a line to the 3rd floor. I just, I don't know. We like the company integrity. Everybody's there. Everybody's going to do the same thing. And like I said, worked in Jersey City, still works in Jersey City. And, if you don't want to try it, don't. But like I said, just knowing your capability. Into 3/4 line, there's a lot of water.
I think it leaves the door open too for discretion. I mean, I've talked about it
Yeah.
a lot with my police friends on this program about how discretion is a big thing in police work. It's just as big a thing in the
Yeah.
fire service too, I find. And if you're a good officer who and a good chauffeur, like you said, who know it's their first due area or first due district, well, then discretion's the name of the game because you know the area so well. You can kind of game plan, like you said, if it's commercial building. Maybe I want that hydrant, or if it's a certain structure, depending on what type of
Yeah.
house it is, or if it's a nail salon or whatever. All right, maybe we can just operate with the tank and hold it to that as long as we got good companies in that know what to do in terms of feeding us. If they got to make their hydrants, there's room for interpretation. And again, as long as you have knowledge of the area in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. It was easy to do in Jersey City because it wasn't a big city, and
Right.
we were out a lot. And if you stretch the 2.5, that wasn't tank water. If you stretched the 2.5, you waited till the engine got a feed, or if you had a hydrant. But if you stretch the 2.5, you generally with the commercial building, you weren't running this commercial building until you had a water source and you could make the push in. But the typical fire, we had a lot of 3-story frames, 2-story frames, 3, 4, 5-story walk-ups, and it just seemed to work. As long as the fire was constrained to that apartment. But we pushed a lot of fire down the hallway with that line too. Just knowing what, not running, straight stream for the whole time. I mean, you hit, shut it down, walk, get up a little closer. Or we had the adjustable nozzles, throw a little fog on to get the fire above your head, and then wait till you got to the door, and the truck took the door, and you straight stream your way in. I'm trying to make it. I know it sounded simple, but those kind of things worked, and they still work. They still work today. I mean, there's not that much difference, and everybody talks about everything's made of plastic now, and they make it seem like the scientists sometimes they make it seem like every fire is a flashover, every single one, and it's not that. Fires smolder sometimes for a long time. There are a lot of fires that I went to in the 90s and in the 2000s that had everything that they talked about, flashover, and you got 3 minutes to get water on a fire. Some fires smolder. They're not all like that. If it's blowing out the windows, or you got that ugly read the smoke. If it's got that ugly smoke coming out, you be a little careful. But not every fire is going to blow up and kill you. Sometimes I think that is all overdone, and maybe I'm old school, but you know what? The only way I think is to go in the building, put the fire out, and to go in the building and find out if it's vacant.
Absolutely. And kind of in line with that, I was going to ask you, back then, at least, before you moved up in the ranks, and even as you were moving up in the ranks, what type of buildings were we talking in Jersey City, Chief? Tenements, 2.5s, cocklofts?
We had it all. We had it all. Again, it was, I had a couple friends from that worked in the. Oh, I'm having a little error here. Let me see if I can get rid of this. Sorry. I had friends that worked in the Bronx. I had friends that worked in Brooklyn, and they would always say to me, "Hey, this section looks like Brooklyn," or they come over and visit. I had some guys even from the Bronx come in and ride with me. When I was in a rescue, and they would say, "Hey, this looks like the Bronx," or "This looks like Brooklyn," and every part of the city. We had the Heights, which was the north. We had downtown, which was on the river. We had Greenville, which was the southern end of the city.
Uh-oh. Looks like the chief might have frozen up on us. We'll wait until that gets settled there. We're talking with Chief Butch Cobb. We'll wait for him to come back. This is Volume 8 of the Best of the Bravest Nationwide edition. So let me just, again, catch up here in the chat. Christian Williams, good to see you here, my friend. TFDC2. I don't know who that is. We just looking good, Chief. Good to see you on here. So, again, we'll wait for the chief to come back and sort that out. But a good conversation so far. I cannot talk today, man. As we wait for the chief to come back, just on operations back then in Jersey City. And of course, not only that, but we'll cover too his ascent through the ranks, ultimately becoming a deputy chief in charge of special operations. So we'll see what happens with his connection, and we'll wait for him to come back. A quick aside to say, and I'll mention it again at the end of the program, that we have Gonzo coming on the show this Friday. Chief Anthony Gonzalez, Coral Springs Fire Department down in Florida, and of course, a frequent collaborator and co-producer on the Getting Salty experience. Brett King's in the chat as well. Good to see you, Chief. And we got Chief Cobb back there. Sorry about that, Chief. I don't know what happened there, but good to have you back, and pick up where you left off in terms of, we were talking about the building layouts in Jersey. You had it all, as you were saying.
We had it all. We, rows of stores, 2-story frames, 3-story frames, 8, 9, 10, 12 in a row, churches, factories, because back when Jersey City was built, the neighborhoods, like the Heights, was built around factories and churches. And so we have factories in the middle of 2.5-story frames that line the streets. Down on the waterfront was a lot of commercial before the railroad kind of went belly up. And obviously that got rebuilt. Now Jersey City's got I think 200 or 300 high rises. That became a whole different game. But
Right.
Up until that point, we had it all. I mean, there was nothing that we didn't have. That if you looked across the river, and you got to remember, we were in the shadow of New York City. We went to fires with them in the tunnels, in the train tunnel, in the Holland tunnel, in the Path subway system. So we did some back and forth. And later on, if you want to get into it, when we started the rescue, it was Ray Downey, through God rest his soul.
Yeah.
His thumbprint is all over our rescue. Invited us over when he had extra space, extra seats for training, whether it was collapse or most of our guys in special operations got an opportunity to take their training. So, not to get off the subject, but
No, not at all.
We had everything. You had to be street smart in Jersey City if you were a fire officer or firefighter, because you didn't know what it was going to be. We had a little bit of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And in line with that, I was going to ask, I mean, you were thinking about it a lot as a firefighter as it was, but you'd have to think about it even more as your ascent up the ranks began and you became an officer. Now, you mentioned replacing Dennis O'Neill, who had a hell of a career in his own right. What was it that made you ultimately say, listen, you were having a hell of a time as a firefighter, but what made you say, you know what, let me give being an officer a shot. Let's see what happens.
Well, I wasn't in any hurry. I think I was on a job for 8 years, 7 or 8 years before I took the test. And I took the lieutenant's test, and I was like 2/3 of the way down the list. But what happened was the lieutenants, a bunch of the lieutenants sued the city saying they were doing the same job as a captain for less money, and they won the case. So all the lieutenants that were lieutenants on a Friday, when they came to work on Monday, they were captains. So then we had a captain on every rig. But I didn't take the test. I was kind of happy doing what I was doing. I enjoyed, learning. And then when I decided to take the test, I got caught in Jersey City had become a consent decree city. So I took the test. I did well. The test got thrown out. Took a second test, did well, got thrown out. And then a judge out in Newark, I think his name was Sorokin, he hired a company, paid a lot of money. He hired a consulting firm. They wrote a test, a 3-part test, and it was the birth of the assessment center, I guess. And and he called it a court-proof test. He says, this is it. This is the test. 3 parts, take it, whatever it is. And third test I took. Now, from the first test to the third test was almost 4 years. There were no promotions for that length of time. They were acting, they were provisional, to fill in the gaps, but there were no promotions. So I look back on that, I kind of got screwed a little bit getting caught in that. But hey, such is life. But I took the final test, and I guess there were probably 200 or 300 firemen eligible to take it, and I came out 1. So thank Mr. Rogan, whatever he did. and at the time, Dennis O'Neill had created a company called EdCon, and they were a company that knew how to take an assessment test pretty much anywhere, but they fitted into the fire service. So I took his classes, and I did well. I came out 1. I had I'm not looking for a pat on the back, but I had a 99.9, and I actually called down and I said, I want to look at my test. And they said, well, what for? I said, because I got a 99.9. I want to see the mistake I made. And basically they said to me, it didn't matter what you got. Nobody gets 100 on a test. So, and I guess it was on a curve. And I actually tied with Paulie Russo. Paulie Russo was an engine 20 with me. Never paid for any of the tutoring tests or anything, but he was up in my I invite everybody up whenever I studied. I said, come on up. He was the only guy that came up to my office. And he had a lot of seniority because you got points for seniority back then. And he had been on a job probably 28 years. So he got maximum. Yeah. I think that's great that you get a lot of points for seniority. I think that
you should.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
So Paulie and I kind of tied. But I was the guy that went up and put his hand on a Bible for everybody else. We had a room full of firemen. I think they probably made 30, 40, and a lot more after that to fill in all spaces over the years where we couldn't promote anybody. So yeah, it was just that, I decided after about 7 or 8 years, I guess, that I wanted to move up. I decided that I wanted my own company. There were some things that, some things that you want to do a little differently, but when you're a fireman, it's hard, especially where I was. I was always the junior man,
Right.
down to 20 engine. Most of these guys had a lot of time on a job, and that made it fun, and all great mentors. Yeah. So, I took the test and I did real well on that test. Got promoted. Got a spot at engine 22 on a different group because you had to change groups. You couldn't go back to your own group. They
Makes sense.
Go as far away as possible. So I went to engine 22, which was like the spot. I was just real fortunate. I got engine 22. Great guys. I mean, anybody down in that 2nd Battalion, they were there for a reason. And I had a great crew. A lot of the fires we went to, I didn't say anything. They just knew what they were doing. And there was no sense in me saying, hey, stop, let's do this. There was no point because everything they were doing, as far as I was concerned, was correct. So, I just made sure they stayed safe. I really honed in on the radio, listened to what was going on, who was where, who was what. And I just had a great crew. And I don't think many new officers had the wherewithal to do that, to take over a company, go to a few fires with them and not say anything because what's it say?
Right.
They knew what they were doing. Every one of these guys, it was just, I was looking out for them.
Right.
I watched it, but they never did anything that I wouldn't have told them to do. And what's the point of telling them, open a nozzle, close the nozzle, hit the seal? They were doing it. Yeah. So sometimes the best officers are the ones that as long as the guys are doing the right thing, is let them do it. So I was like that at the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when to hone them in when conditions are unsafe, when to give an order if one is required, depending on the situation. I mean, it's not to say that you were hands off because that would imply carelessness. Certainly wasn't the case, but you were the type of guy to trust guys' abilities. You weren't a micromanager, and that alone goes a long way in terms of building good relationships with your crew. The fact that you trust them to make that hydrant, you trust them to move that line. Hey, you know what to do. I'm going to let you do it. If you need me, I'm right here.
Yeah. And these guys, I was never looking, for a pat on the back or anything. As long as we did the job. But even before I retired, or at my retirement party, someone came up to me and said, "You know what? It was the best year we had. You were really, really good." And then that wasn't a bid spot. I was just filling in, but it was a spot that was open. So I stayed there for a while, and then I bid back to engine 20 on a different group because I just wanted to go back there. I knew the lay of the land there. And I went back, and it was the time where the senior guys were retiring. So when I went back there, I got most of my crew had much less time than me. I had just a great crew. It was just amazing. And I guess when you get a reputation, the guys that like that reputation or hear what you did or didn't do, they just kind of make their way to you. And I was so fortunate, it's a relatively young fireman, Glenn Jankowski, Pete Greasy. Pete just retired at 42 years. I think he stayed at 43 years. He was a battalion chief. I had him as a fireman. Just great crew. They were go-getters. Now I had to lead a little bit. It was a little different than with the senior guys down at 22 engine. I had to lead a little bit, but but we had a good time. We had a good time. It's had a really good crew. I always kind of cut from the same piece of cloth. We were all in it together, and they followed me. When I left 20 and went to the rescue, they followed me to the rescue. They were all, all welcome, and it was just good. I was just fortunate. I didn't have to order people around. Occasionally you get some guy on transfer that came from a slow company. I'd have to give him a little push now and again, but we had a good time. We were good at what we did, and that was the key thing. We wanted to be good at what we did. We wanted to be better than anybody else, and we had a lot of competition. Down in the 2nd Battalion and 4th Battalion, we had a lot of competition that you put it out. You didn't want anybody else coming and doing your work. So, but that had good and bad with it with the competition, because sometimes guys, everybody get low on air, but you wouldn't leave until the last second because you wanted to get the job done. But I was fortunate. I was blessed. I was blessed with the people that came to work for me. So.
Absolutely. And it makes the transition easier before we hit on, of course, you going to the rescue, because firefighter to lieutenant is the hardest jump that you can make. That, and also captain to chief. It opens up a whole different can of worms. But that transition was made a heck of a lot easier, it seems like, because of the caliber of guys that you had working for you and working with you. You seem like the type of officer that you weren't working for me, per se. Your mentality was you're working with me.
Yeah, when we were in that burning, smoke-filled building, we were all in it together. There was no me or I. It was just we were all in this together. We were doing it together. We were coming out together. I looked out for their safety. I mean, that was always key with me. I didn't want anybody getting hurt and or anything else. So even as a new officer, but I was fortunate. I was very, very fortunate that I just had these good guys. And once the core group bid in, it was Dennis Whalen, Tommy Ebert. Once they bid in, we nobody left until they got promoted. And I have to say that my original crew, every one of them left the job at a higher rank, either captain or battalion chief. And that makes me feel good that that they did that, because when I studied, they studied.
Yeah, so, and there you go. Yeah. And it paid off for them, and it paid off for you all the same, which is a great thing to see.
Yeah, and they were leaders. Amongst themselves, they were. I could tell that someday they'd have their own company, they'd have their own battalion, and I was very proud that when that finally came about, that they all got promoted. That was great. That was a proud moment for me.
Absolutely. Needs of a city evolve. If you look at Jersey City's population, the estimate is over 300,000 people living in Jersey City. At least or not a couple, but 5 years ago, almost 6 now for the census, they had it at 292,000 people living in Jersey City. I'm not sure if the number was that back then, but it was a sizable number in its own right, which leads us into the incorporation of the heavy rescue. So go in there, and some of the cross training you mentioned with Chief Downey, who for a very long time before he was Chief Downey was Captain Downey at Rescue 2 in Brooklyn. Yes. He had Rescue 2 for 14 years, was a fireman in the rescue, I believe, too, before he became a lieutenant and ultimately a captain. So just in terms of the incorporation of the rescue, tell me about that process and what made you want to go to it in the first place.
Yeah, well, number one, it was one of my proudest moments in 1991. I think it was April of 91 when Rescue 1 went online, because myself and Captain Frank Bentavegna. Oh, geez, I'm sorry.
You're fine. You're excited. I love it.
Yeah, well, what happened was there's two sides to Jersey City, like in most cities. There was the political side where we had a fire director, which in other cities it would be a fire commissioner. But Frank got picked. The chief of department picked me. And basically they said, we want a heavy rescue. We want a technical rescue. We want it all. You have about a year to build it. And don't worry about the budget. Okay. So Frank honed in on the fire truck and what he thought we were going to need in it. And I honed in on the equipment and the reality of a heavy rescue. And at that point, because of Firehouse Magazine, which I know we'll talk about later, and my connections there, I could drop a million names, Mike, and
drop them. I don't care, by all means,
because they're friends of mine. But I started out, the chief gave me, the chief of my battalion chief and the deputy they gave me days off. And one of the first places I went was Rescue 3. A good friend of mine who was a volunteer with me, Mickey Comboy, he's lieutenant in Rescue 3. He'd be a great, he's one of the most decorated firemen in the city. And he's coming up on, he's down to his last, I think, few months. And then they're going to give him the boot. But
anyway, age out.
Yeah, we were volleys together for a while. And so I called him. Pete Lund was the lieutenant. They were in Manhattan at the time. I knew Pete from Firehouse. We were good friends. Pete actually rescued my wife. My wife fell off a curb, and Pete Lund grabbed her before she fell into traffic. So that's a whole other story. But anyway, I called Mickey, and he relayed it to Pete. And Pete said, "Yeah, come on over." So I did a couple of day tours over there, walked around the rig, looked at every tool. And, and Pete and the guys would say to me, "You have to have this. You have to have this. This is secondary. Get this down the road. You need to have this." So I went there and got all that knowledge. I had volumes of notes and books. I left there, and then I got to talk to John Norman for a little bit at Rescue 1, because there was some talk about having a scuba team in Jersey City. That got taken off the board right away as soon as we found out. The guys in New York City were telling me once they went in the water, they were done for hours. Out of the water, decon, blood tests, all that. So you were done for a while, and we were only going to have one rescue in Jersey City. We can afford that. So myself and Frank got that taken off the table. There were some other captains that thought we needed a scuba team, and that got taken off the table right away. From there, I went down to Philadelphia. Freddie Endicott, I don't know if you know Freddie, but he's the head of the whole USAR system. He may retire, but he eventually retired from Philadelphia as a battalion chief and took over that whole system. That was his job for the federal government. But Freddie was lieutenant in Rescue 1 in Philly. And I went down there, same thing. I spent some time with all those guys in the firehouse. I slept over one night. Demoing the tools, showing me, and they only had one rescue for the whole city of Philly, which I thought was odd, but that was their system. But again, I got a lot of knowledge from them. It was almost the same tools that Pete Lund was telling me about. From there, I went up to Boston. I had a friend in Rescue 1 in Boston. I chatted with them for a while. Again, it was a smaller city. So I got to go to 3 or 4, 5 rescues and spoke, one-on-one with the officers or the firemen that I knew from Firehouse Magazine. These were all the guys that were doing hands-on training for Harvey, which I was in charge of at the time. And so it just opened up so many doors for me. So I come back with all of this, and then we had to look at what we wanted and what we could afford on our budget, the fire truck we were buying. But we took about a little over a year, and we put that thing on the street, and it was loaded, and it had everything. Everything you can imagine. We did high angle rope rescue. I traded because it was expensive, but I traded, believe this or not, I traded the Passaic County Police. I went up to see the Passaic County Sheriff, and I heard from one of his guys that was a volley with me in West Milford that they were in trouble with OSHA, New Jersey OSHA, because they had air packs in the jail, and they weren't maintained, and nobody knew how to. So I went to him and said, "Listen, you guys have a high angle rope rescue course coming up. I need to put 25 guys through it." And I said, "This is what I'll do for you. I will write a respiratory protection program."
Oh. He's got that getting salty internet. You were right, Joe Maliga. He's getting to the good part, too. We'll wait for him to come back. Hopefully he's got his device on a charger, whatever it is that he's using, so we can keep this conversation going, because he's offering a lot of good nuggets tonight. We'll get him back. I'm sure he'll sign in eventually. Okay, he is back. We're waiting for him to connect. Stand by. Chief, I see you in the back there, but you got to turn your camera on if you can. That way you can bring him back in. Good evening to my boy Nick there. New Jersey Fire guys. Good to see you, my friend. Hope your podcast has been going well. Seems like it has. I've been keeping up. You've been doing a great job, my friend. So Nick Palumbo is tuning in tonight. So let's see if the Chief can get his camera going. As soon as he does, we'll put him back in and we'll continue in regards to this conversation. Man, excuse me. And by the way, as you saw me spit on this earlier, Body Armor, sponsor your boy, please, if you can. love these things, man, especially as I've been on a higher protein diet. These things are also very good for electrolytes to go with whatever meal that I'm having. Still waiting on the Chief to come back in. As far as future shows, I mentioned Gonzo earlier. We are also working additionally. Still can't see it, Chief. Let's see. Who do we have for a period of time after my couple weeks? There we go. We got the Chief back now. I'll tell you guys later about that. Chief's back. And, well, hang on a second. You were working on a respiratory program for the Passaic County Sheriff's Office.
Yeah. I had done that for Jersey City. We got in some trouble. They came and inspected our equipment. They were taking bottles off the rig and putting them on the floor. You can't use it. It's not right to the exact pound that you needed, and blah, blah, blah. So, and we didn't have a respiratory protection program. It was a long time. I was a captain. So the chief of department, he knew my volley background, and he said, I need you to go to this course. I think it was down at Robert Wood Johnson. He said, get some training on a respiratory protection. We need a program right away. But I can tell the story now. I didn't tell it for years. But so I go down there. The second day I'm in the course, this guy walks in, and he was a volunteer fireman in Bergen County. His name was, I forget his first name, but he had a doctorate, and he was a volunteer fireman. His last name was, I think it was John Malou. And he saw me, and he said, Butch, he goes, come on to my office. I went in his office during a break. He said, what are you doing? I said, we got in trouble. He said, you need a respiratory protection program? I said, yeah. He said, all right. So he goes in, he talks to, he had like a secretary or something, and we're talking. She walks in, and she's got this like 25-page document, and it says Jersey City Fire Department Respiratory Protection Program. And he says, here. And I said, well, he goes, yeah. He goes, that was my job, writing one for the state. And he said, I know Jersey City really well, and you got to fill in some of the blanks when you get back with the numbers and blah, blah. I went back, and OSHA came down, and I said, this is great. They said, can we pass this around to other departments as a model? And so.
What's going on with this Wi-Fi, man? It's that Arizona Wi-Fi, man. First, I mean, Arizona and myself don't have a great relationship, although I can't even say anything because I have a Randy Johnson Diamondbacks jersey, so I can't even say much. First, they beat the Yankees in the 2001 World Series, and then on top of that, now they're robbing us of a great conversation. I don't know what the connection is out there in good old AZ, but we'll wait for him to come back again. He may have to use a different device. I still have to get into, of course, him being a battalion chief in the 2nd Battalion, then him being a deputy. He was also chief of operations. And they were active in the help in regards to mutual aid after 9/11 down in New York City. But again, we have to wait for him to come back. We'll settle that. So as I was saying, in regards to future shows, coming up after that 2-week period of which there's no shows because as I mentioned the other day, I'm working a couple weeks at dispatch in the 4 to 12 rotation. So there's going to be no shows unless it's like a pre-recorded one. We do have Nick Esposito from Truck Tactics, I believe, coming on. Which should be fun. He was a Bridgeport guy, and he'll be able to offer some insight, of course, on his career. And same thing in regards to training, which, again, should be a very, very enjoyable conversation. He's a guy that has seen and done a lot, and Bridgeport's no joke. They're a very busy city in their own right. And then after that, Garrett Lindgren's coming back. Billy Ryan's coming back. We're going to dive into the St. George Hotel fire of 1995. That'll be a special show when we get to it. It's going to be January 30th. So essentially about 3 weeks from now. And I look forward to bringing you those episodes. February, we'll see what happens. We're working towards episode 400. We should hit it February 9th, I think. Should be the day that we hit that. We're working on getting some people. Producer Victor and myself are cooking some things up in that regard. Let me see something here. Oh, yes. Andres Machecha, who is an NYPD undercover. He's coming up February 2nd. Producer Victor just reminded me. And the 6th, do I have anybody for the 6th? Let me see right here. If I have anybody for February the 6th. That Friday, no, not yet. We'll work on it. We'll get somebody. That would be episode 399. That'll be episode 399. Still waiting for Chief Cobb to come back. And again, if you guys have any questions in the chat, fire away and we'll get to it. Hopefully we don't lose him for good because he's telling a lot of good stories tonight. So we'll see if we can get him back in the meantime. And of course, if you can, actually, you know what? While you can, Victor, run your ad. Run the chop seat real quick. Let's promote that real quick. While we wait. Baseball fans, if you bleed Braves country, red and blue, this one's for you. Check out the Chop Seat podcast hosted by Victor Mignetis. Every week, Victor dives deep into all things Atlanta Braves and Major League Baseball, from game recaps and trade rumors to player spotlights and the latest league news. Whether it's breaking down the lineup, debating pitching rotations, or talking postseason chances, the Chop Seat gives you honest takes, sharp analysis, and a fan's true passion for the game. So if you're looking for your go-to Braves and MLB podcast, pull up a chair and join the conversation. Subscribe to the Chop Seat today on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Because in Braves country, there's always room at the Chop Seat. Yes, Joe Maliga, second book is on the way. As I talked about the previous show, I'm basically on the 20-yard line with that. I will very much try not to miss the field goal like that Ravens kicker did last night to blow the season. Poor guy. But nevertheless, yeah, that book is on the 20-yard line, basically. I just literally need 2 more chapters, which I'm working on with the individuals who I reached out to be a part of that book, of which they agreed to. I need a few more photos for one particular chapter, which is already transcribed. I just need the photos to match it. And then I'm going to get it on over to an editor, and then I'll get it on out there. And hopefully my goal for that is at least by the spring, summertime to have that book done. It'll be 15 chapters. It's not going to be nearly as long as Good Folks Mad City was. This one will be a bit of a shorter book, but, sometimes less is more. And I'll probably aim for that. I'd like to write more than just a couple books in the future. We'll see where the road takes me, but that's the second one. And that one will be Police Don't Move, the NYPD investigations you should know about. So hopefully by June, your boy will be a 2-time author. But just to give you the layout, too, of Jersey City while we wait for Chief Cobb to come back again, as of 2 years ago now, because we're in 2026, the population estimate was 302,824. The total, when they did the census in 2020, was 292,449. Now, I'll pull up a picture here of their heavy rescue just to give you an indication of what it looks like. And again, it's needed for I'm firmly of the belief, if your city exceeds, again, I cannot speak English today, a population of, I want to say, like 50,000, you probably should have a heavy rescue in it. This is what the current Jersey City heavy rescue looks like. I'll find a photo of it. I'll share the tab here. Again, a needed rig for a city that big. Beautiful rig, too. Man, I love it. It kind of looks like the old FDNY squad rigs a little bit. So I like the layout of it. My favorites, personally, as you guys know, are the old Mack trucks. But even for a while, where I live in the city of New Haven, we had squads for a number of years, which were great. They basically operated in the same vein as the FDNY squads did. And then in 2019, Rescue 1 went into service for the city of New Haven. The squads went out of service. But again, where I live is a city of 130,000 people. And when you add in the traffic coming in for people going to school or people coming into the city to work, it's a groundswell of up to 300,000 people. So a rescue is needed, and a rescue is pivotal, especially for whatever it is the city can throw your way. And I know Jersey City felt the same thing. So we're going to wait for Chief Cobb to come back in. Still has yet to come back in. Hello to Detective Bill Hansen. And as we just ran the ad with the Chop Seat, by the way, on a side note, make sure you do subscribe to the Chop Seat. Victor does have a YouTube channel, which he's more than welcome to put in the chat. So in addition to the great work that he does for me on Mike to New Haven, he does great work in his own right. Of course, for the Chop Seat, breaking down all things MLB. Off season's the off season right now. Nothing much is happening. Even in years where the sport has been tremendously popular, the off season's always been notoriously slow. But nevertheless, he breaks down a lot of that, a lot of content of yesteryear as it pertains to the game. And it's a good show to listen to. I'm not just saying that because he's my pal and my brother-in-law, but it genuinely is an enjoyable program. So he put it, of course, in the YouTube chat. And again, guys, fire away questions so that when Chief Cobb comes back, we can highlight them appropriately. Don't be shy. He's got a lot of insight, got a lot of knowledge for what is, of course, another volume of the best, the bravest nationwide. This is volume 8. Hello to Joel Kanaski, who's tuning in tonight. I believe I just saw his name pop up. Good friend of this program as well. He was on this program a little while ago, and boy, was he fun to have. Great conversation we had with him. So very much good to hear from you, my friend. And I hope all is well. Hope all is well with you. So let's see who we got here in the chat. Anybody else? I don't see anybody except for you guys. But again, appreciate all you guys tuning in. We're working on getting him back. And I don't want to give too much of his career away. So hopefully he'll tell it when he gets back in. If we're not able to get him back within a certain time frame, we'll have to kind of call him up and see if we can do a part two. Gonzo's coming up on Friday at 6. We'll see if the Chief can come back so we could salvage this one. And if not, like I said, we'll bring him back. We have to bring him back because he was telling a lot of good stories. And thanks to Brett King, even with the technical difficulties the Chief is having tonight, it's still been a very enjoyable show. So I thank you for connecting us. So we'll see what happens. We will see what happens. Let me see if I can go through the list here of upcoming shows. But in the meantime, actually, let me give a shout out to some of my friends who were in the New Haven Fire Academy with me, particularly the guys that work the 3rd Division. There was a fire. Oh, actually, you know what? Chief's back. Hold the thought. I'll give the shout out later. Good to have you back, Chief. I was getting worried there. We weren't going to be able to get you back in time. So we left off, of course, with you writing the program for the Passaic County.
I don't know if you can hear me.
I can. Can you hear me? You got me, Chief? Can you hear me, Chief? Chief, you hear me?
Oh my God, no sound.
All right. We'll put him in the back while he rectifies that. Hopefully we can get that up and running where he's able to connect. I'm glad he is back. So, yeah, hopefully we don't have, I just saw your message there, Producer Victor. Hopefully this can be the only episode we do and we can get everything. So we'll, again, we're just working on these technical difficulties here. Let me adjust the Chief's title here, and hopefully we'll bring him back in shortly if his sound is working. And like Commissioner Von Essen joked about when he was on the program a little while ago, it's probably China hacking the program here tonight with all these sound difficulties. That was a great episode in its own right. If you guys want to go check it out, I was the one with the tech issues that night, but thankfully I was able to get back. All right, let's see what's popping in now. You got me now, Chief?
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4.
I could hear you, Chief. Can you hear me?
Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Can you hear me, Chief? You got me, Chief? I don't think he has me. Well, all right. We'll give it a few more minutes. If not, we will have to unfortunately cut the program short tonight due to these technical problems. Hopefully, we don't have to do that, but we may have to just, like I said, bring the Chief back for what would be episode 394B. For us to be able to get the rest of his career and pick up where we left off. So let's see what we can do here. Hopefully we can get this sound, and hopefully we can get everything off and running. So we'll wait in the meantime, a couple minutes more, and see if we can appropriately adjust everything. So again, this is episode 394A of the Mike to New Haven podcast. This is the Best of the Bravest nationwide edition, Volume 8, and our guest is Deputy Chief Butch Cobb out of the Jersey City Fire Department, who was involved in special operations, was a citywide tour commander at one point. So let's see if we can get his sound up and running to be able to get this program back up and running and see if we can get him in there momentarily. But let's see what else I can pluck up here for the rescue. They also have Squad 4. I'll pull up a picture of Squad 4 just for context, so you guys know what they're rocking with. Unless you're familiar with the Jersey area, then you know already. But for those of you that may not, again, that's another very interesting rig in its own right. This is from Mike Martinelli's page. He photographed it. Oh, actually, is that Squad 4? No. He photographed it a little while ago. I believe this may be the squad rig. Stand by on that for context to show what they're running with. Not a Martinelli photo. That was a different photo. We took a Jersey Rescue one, but they're Squad 4 for those of you that are curious about it. So let's see. Appreciate all you bearing with us during these technological problems. And hopefully we'll have the Chief back in momentarily to continue where we left off. Like I said, I want to get to him helming the 2nd Battalion as a battalion chief. And of course, as a sent to deputy. And of course, being chief of operations. His story to tell, not mine, but giving you guys a sneak peek of what's to come if we're able to get him back and continue on with tonight's episode. Stand by on that one. Guys, I had to take a swig of water because my room is a sauna. Even though it's January, it feels like it's July in here. And I don't know why. Chief, can you hear me now?
Yes.
There we go. Excellent. We got the chief back.
I switched computers. I think I had it on my laptop, and I think my laptop actually burned up.
Oh, well, listen.
I could hear some strange things, and it smelled a little funny, so I
Yeah, we don't.
and I ran in.
Smart thing.
Yeah.
We don't need a box alarm happening live on the program, of course.
I apologize for that.
No, it's okay.
Never had that happen.
I was able to hold the fort down in the meantime. I'm just glad we didn't have to cut the episode short. So where we left off, you teamed up with the Passaic County Sheriff's Office to write something for respiratory. It was a trade-off. Pick it up where we left.
Yeah. So I traded. I wrote the respiratory protection program for them. Got it straightened out with OSHA, and he let me put in 20 guys, 5 from each group, through the high angle rope rescue. It was a professional company. We used this big cliff in Patterson, and we learned everything we needed to get started. The equipment, the safety of it, how to rescue somebody, how to bring all the pulleys, everything, every knot. And it was, so that was the trade-off. And that got high angle into the rescue once everybody got certified. And, the rest, like I said, it was just all these, when I went to work for when I say work, it wasn't for pay, but when I went to work for Harvey at Firehouse, it was like I had an encyclopedia of the best firefighters in the nation. I could just go, well, let's see, I help rescue, and all these guys would pop up and I'd call them, and we knew each other. I got the training, hands-on training programs put together, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what we did. We spent a year. We got it completed. Everybody. Now, I told you about the bidding system before. The union let us do away with the bidding system for the rescue. We put the rescue together by resume, and we had volunteer firemen from all over the county that came to the city, lived in the city, got on the job and had a background in rescue. So we took the resumes and we started the rescue with each company had 5. The minimum was 5. We wanted 6. They wouldn't give us 6. I think I sent you a picture. We had a picture of we started out with 5 of us in Gumby. I don't know if you saw that picture or not. We had a giant Gumby.
Pull it up here.
It was a shot at the administration for not giving us 6 firemen on the rescue, but we had 5. So we picked an officer and 4 firefighters for each group. When we started, no bidding in. You had to have the resume. You had to know, extrication. We wanted you to have something to offer and teach, and so we could get on the road right away. We didn't want to waste any more time, and we did. And they all had good resumes within Jersey City. They were all good firemen. They all had great recommendations from their company officers, from their battalion chiefs. So that's how we got started. We spent a year putting the rig together. We bought the equipment that we needed to get started. That was told to me by all the experts around the country. I mean, it was phenomenal. Like I said, the encyclopedia I had to work with. So then we got on the road, and we actually started with a Suburban and a van. We couldn't wait. We were waiting on an E1 rescue truck, walk-through body. We told them all the equipment we wanted in the yeah, that went with us on all the rigs until somebody from City Hall called the chief of department and said enough's enough. So but he probably went to about 25, 30 working fires with us. We'd always
really?
Yeah, we took them with us. So anyway, and we got on the road, but that was a proud moment for me. And everybody that got there. Now it wasn't without problems, because before we started the rescue, they had to close 4 companies. The administration told the chief close 4 companies. So the chief's engineering formula for this was he closed the 2 busiest companies in the city, Engine 20 and Truck 5, and the 2 slowest companies, Engine 1 and Ladder 1. They were so that was that's how he did it. But when he closed 4 companies, we got the rescue back with the 5th man. So it was like losing 2.5 companies. But 20 engine and 5 truck is where we put the rescue. So I had the last run as an officer on Engine 20. Went to a rubbish fire around the corner, and when I backed in, I said, for the last time, Engine 20 is backing into quarters, being disbanded. And then the next day we started the rescue in that firehouse, 582 Communipore Avenue. I spent probably a quarter of my career, maybe more, in that firehouse, and it was a great place to work. It was a great place to start the rescue. A lot of room. There was a 3-story frame next door that was vacant. There was a 2-story brick factory next to the police station was attached to us. That was vacant. There was a 2.5-story Victorian type building on the corner. There was a movie theater. So we were the only occupied building on the block at the time, but it was a lot of fun. And we got started. We were up and running, and they changed the running assignment. It was 4-2 the rescue and 2 chiefs to every struck box. So the rescue in Jersey City started out for every single box on the initial call. And it didn't matter if somebody said, geez, I have a slight odor coming from an electrical socket. 4-2, the rescue and a battalion and a deputy. There was the dispatchers didn't have any, we didn't give them the initiative to figure out what they needed. And it's still like that. 4-2 to rescue, it's actually more than I get. 4-2 to rescue, 3 chiefs, the mass service unit, the safety officer. But back then when the rescue came out, it was 4-2 in the rescue. So we were busy. We were probably doing upwards of 4,000 runs that first year, going to everything. And we cut it back after that. I mean, it was, but like I said, there were a lot of unhappy souls that hated the rescue because of what we did. And it's not like we did it. It was just that we were part of it. Sure. But, it was good for the city. But it came around. When we went to a fire, we stayed. I go in service on a radio because the city was really our first due area. And I called dispatch and say, rescue one's available on the scene. And we would stay and help put ladders away. We helped load hose. We were trying to make everybody just a little bit more lenient towards us because there was some animosity. But then there was a really bad fire up that Dennis O'Neill was running. That some firemen got electrocuted, and one of them died. Unfortunately, and he was an off-duty fireman, Carlos Negron. He lived in the area. He went and he was helping him put a ladder up in ice and snow, and they touched the wire. So there were 3 or 4 firemen in cardiac arrest, and one of them was a big rescue hater, but he was brought back. They did CPR on him all the way to the hospital, rescue guys, and he lived. He had a couple bad burns, but when he finally came back to duty after some rehab and months on sick leave, he went to the chief of the department and said, I want to go to the rescue. So he went from, and that changed the tune. Walter Milne was his name. Walter, big burly guy. I mean, he didn't need extrication tools. Walter would just run through the door, and if my kid was trapped, I want Walter to come look for him. So Walter went to the chief and he got put on a rescue. He had all the credentials and he was a great fireman. And that kind of softened the blow. And we would, after that, there wasn't any, all that animosity and whatnot went away. And then we fit in because, then we started having some fires where, some guys got in trouble. And it was always, where's the rescue? Rescue, where are you? Rescue, rescue this, rescue that. So, we showed we were worth the change. And then we started this alternate program where if a qualified rescue guy went on vacation, we had a list of kids. I call them kids. Everybody was a kid to me because I was older. But they would put their name on an alternate list. So if we needed somebody for a vacation period, we'd go to the alternate list. Okay, call the 3rd Battalion. He's next on the list. And he'd come ride with us and train with us. And we'd check the boxes. Okay, you got trained in the jaws. You got trained in this. You got trained in that. And as the boxes, then he could bid there or go there when it was an opening. So it was good. And that alternate list went from 1 or 2 to each captain must have had 20 firemen on that list that wanted to go to the rescue. That was like the place to go if you wanted to go to do a little bit of everything. Water rescue. We had a couple Zodiacs and we used it. We used everything in that truck probably the first year and a half. But it was good. It was good, and the deputies, the chiefs loved us. 5 of us showed up. We could break into 3 groups. Yeah, we did. We could send 2 to the fire floor, 2 above the fire, and one to the roof because knowing there was a truck going to the roof, so it wasn't no freelancing. But chiefs loved us because we pulled up, and there were 3 things we could do. And you know what? I'm not bragging, but they knew whatever they told us to do, we did, and we did it well, and we did it quickly. So So that was the rescue years. That was great. That was. I don't know if I could say this, Mike, but I've said this in other places. For the 5 years, I think before I got promoted to battalion, it was the most fun I ever had with my clothes on. So we had a ball, and it was the model brotherhood. We did everything together. We had this famous Christmas shopping spree, where the closest to the Christmas, we'd get off doing our 24, and we'd hit one of the bars for breakfast in Jersey City, and we'd take the subway over to New York. We'd go over to McSorley's and plan our day. And McSorley's is like you could only get two beers at a time, couldn't get one. Yeah. And then I had a friend that had one of the spaces in the Diamond District at Canal and I forget the other street, but it was the Diamond District, and she had a store in there, and we all would go there and we'd buy stuff for our families, and she gave us some great breaks. But over the years, I got to know her really well. My son-in-law got his engagement ring there for my daughter, and my son got hit, so it was kind of like a hand-me-down. But I got to know her really well, and she said, I knew when you were coming. As soon as you walked in the store, she said, I could smell you guys, because we'd be having a little. We had a couple we call them soda pops.
Couple libations.
Yeah. So I mean, that's like we were so together. We did everything together. Christenings, confirmation, you name it. We went as a group. It was really kind of cool, and it was a shame to break it up. But I got promoted, and then Pete Greasy was with me the whole way. He made captain, and eventually made it back to my spot, which was good. And it was a good trip, and we carried our weight. And like I said, a lot of people. I love telling these stories. I don't care if somebody's listening from Jersey City and they yell at me, but there was a point in time where when overtime came up on the rescue, there was an overtime list, and they went through it, and your name would come up and say, 12 truck, 20 engine, 5 engine. That's it, and you'd pick your spot. And then when there were no spots left, you'd get a call and say, okay, it's engine 5 at a rescue. Then the next guy would be, you got overtime 14 hours, night tour, rescue 1. And guys would turn it down. And finally, somebody called the union and said, this is crazy. They should only use rescue guys there, because at least on my group, we usually went out the door about 9 in the morning after cleaning the house, doing all the equipment. And we were out training probably until 3, 4 in the afternoon, come back for a little bit, back out training 7 to 10. And then 12, 14, 15 runs. So there were guys that didn't want to come there. They just, they'd pass up the overtime before they would come and work a night tour with us. But so be it. But we did a lot of training. I mean, you could ask anybody. In all 4 rescues, we were in vacant buildings. The city gave us a list of vacant buildings that were going to be torn down and said, do whatever you want, except burn them. But some of the guys kids in the neighborhood did that for us. But no, just joking. But we were in a vacant building. We have nail guns, nailing doors down, putting wire on doors, everything to try to make it hard to learn how to do this, how to do that. And if we had a problem at an actual fire, we'd try to replicate it in a vacant building. And I think there were 3,000 or 4,000 of them. So we, and all the companies could use them, but we were just out every single day, trying to figure this out, figure that out. The compound, all the cars that the cops had taken down, towed off the street. Nobody, after a while, they jumped them. And they would call us and say, I got 15 cars, do what you want. And, it just, it worked really well. So we got very proficient in everything we had to do. We had some of the cities calling us, Kearney, other towns, calling us, hey, we need your rescue. We got a car under a tractor trailer. And we'd show up and amaze them. Because we had practiced that, or had it. We had the turnpike running through Jersey City. So anyway, the rescue years were like I said, it was, when you get to the end and ask, it was one of the best things that in my career was being part of that, seeing it work, seeing it be, we were the envy of a lot of other cities. I had guys come over. Bobby Plessel rode with me in the rescue, but Mickey Conboy came over. I had guys from the rescue in New York City that had seen it all. And they would come on, and they always say, how do you do it with 5? or even when I was in battalion chief, I had a couple of chiefs from LA County, and say, you know, well, you're responding to the fire. Who's standing out front? And I said, nobody. I said, if an officer's standing out front, I suspend them on the spot. But anyway, story for another time. But rescuers were good. We became, I think, a premier rescue in the country. We were just good at a lot of things. So
Yeah.
anyway, and I don't know how many people got an opportunity to build a rescue with that type of input. You know, from a Pete Lund, from a John Norman, from a Ray Downey. I mean, how many people had that opportunity?
Right.
But you know, again, Firehouse was the magic ball. I just had to rub that, and somebody's name would pop up. Hey, this is Butch. Yeah, come on over. So it was great. It was great.
I can imagine. And that was the thing, you know, and Jim Pavada, I see your question. I'll get to it momentarily. I do promise to do so. That was the thing, too, that I imagine made leaving to go be a battalion chief very hard. You had the 2nd Battalion, which was one of the city's more active spots, but those were, and not to diminish other parts of your career, you still had fun. But that was the Camelot years from what you described. I mean, you just lit up when I brought up the rescue. Those were your sweet spot years. And I can imagine if time machines were real and you could go back to any part of your career, those are the years you're going back to.
Yeah, I think because it was, you know, I'm amongst firemen listening to this, and you know the fire service. So when I say it was a lot of fun, it was serious business.
Absolutely.
It was serious business. Believe me.
Oh yeah,
when we pulled up, it was serious business. But you know what? It was, you know, to get to do your job that often and be good at it. It was something special. It was just a special time. And going to the 2nd Battalion, you know, it was time. It was time because I was a little bit older. And I used to tell my wife, she said, you're getting too old. You got to get out of there. You know, you got my father died at 57 of a heart attack, and one of his brothers died when he was 60. So my wife kept bringing that up. And I said, listen, I test it. Every time we have a 4 or 5-story walk up and we run up there with our equipment, I stop at the landing. And if nothing hurts, I'm okay. I said, that's my test. I said, my heart's still pumping, everything's fine. But it got to the point where, you know, it was just time to go. And it just kind of, everything fell in line. And, you know, being the 2nd Battalion, I still had the rescue because they would come to every box I had, a little further away. And I knew their capabilities, which was really, really good. But the 2nd Battalion, again, the guys down there were there for a reason. You know, when I got down there, I had to switch groups. Again, you couldn't be the battalion when you got promoted. I had Tony De La Rosa and Ray Gill were the 2 captains in 19 and 8 truck where I was housed. And they treated me like a freaking king, Mike. It was unbelievable. And it was tradition. I mean, that's the way it was in Jersey City. You know, the chief was the chief. He had his office, and that was, you stayed out of there. You know, and the fireman wanted to see the chief, he went to the captain and said, listen. Yeah. And the captain would ask why first. Because I always told the officers, you figure it out. Before it gets to my office, you figure it out. And if it don't, then you come in and you tell me and we'll figure it out together. But that was my mantra when I went there. But I had a great time. Great captains, great crews. You know, again, I did make a couple mistakes at the beginning as the battalion chief. We had a lot of vacant buildings. I had probably, you know, one night I was working on Group D, probably the best cap, and ask anybody back in the day. Jimmy was, his name just slipped by, but the captain of 22 engine was the best in the city. And we had a vacant building. It was off pretty good. It was out 4 or 5 windows, and they got in first due, and I'm watching. And finally, I pulled the plug on it. I called dispatch. I said, sound the evacuation tone. I want everybody out. And Jimmy Fallon. And Jimmy came out. Now, we were friends, but he came out and he said to me, you know what? He said, if you were still in a rescue, we'd still be in there. And he was right. I thought about it. Yeah. But you know what? When you become a battalion chief and stand in front of a burning building and you got 16, 18 guys running in there.
Bit of a different story.
They know what they're doing. That safety whistle goes off in my head. I didn't want anybody getting hurt. And but you know, that's what happens. They have a reputation of being kind of a little crazy. That they expect that they're going to be able to do that and get away with it. But I put my foot down a few times, and you know, it was the right thing to do. And he said it tongue in cheek, but I took it for what it was worth. And you know, so maybe I calculated a little bit more. But it's a tough. I doubt there's an officer, a company officer ever that got promoted to the next level, battalion chief, that was standing in front of that building at the beginning and say he was worried about his men. You had to be.
Right.
You had to be. It was part of the job,
If you didn't, something was wrong with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I made them know when we did a good job. I made them know, and when something screwed up, I would take the company aside. I wouldn't take one person aside. I'd take the company aside. I'd tell the captain, listen, we're gonna have a little meeting, and we talk about it. I had one of the greatest deputy chiefs in Jersey City, Neil Vazone. We had a really nasty fire one night in a 2-story, low-income housing area. And, kids hanging out the window. It was really bad. It was really bad. We thought it just looked like we were going to lose people. And we got in there, not just us, the whole first alarm got in there and just killed this thing. We just got in there and amazing, dropping kids down from the window and running out with kids wrapped in a fireman's coat. And it was just amazing. And Neil got up on the hose bed of a pump and was all said and done. Big crowd. And again, it was in the lower end of the economic structure of Jersey City, and big crowd standing around. He got up there, Neil Vazone, and said, "I love these gladiators. They can save anybody." He's standing in a dirty white shirt, because all the chiefs had to wear white shirts back then, to this day. And he got up and he did that, and he raised his arms up, and we all looked at him and said, "This guy is like that was the best pep talk." It lasted about 30 seconds, but you know what? We would have went anywhere for this guy. You know what? I just think we would have crossed the line.
Yeah.
You know what? If we had to, we would have stepped over the line for him. So anyway, just one of those old time stories. World War II vet, great guy, knew everything. We just it really kind of pumped you up. I always had, there's just so many good places in Jersey City, and I never worked like really north of Montgomery Street, I guess. I never got into the 3rd Battalion or the 1st Battalion. I just always in the South End. It was just, I had good opportunities down there and great firemen. I just, it was an occasional guy that, needed to move on. But I was just fortunate. I was very, very fortunate. Like I said, with these 2 guys in the 2nd Battalion. And Tony got to be a deputy chief. Ray left as a captain, Ray Gill, but they were phenomenal. And I think everybody, a 1908 truck made captain too eventually. And that's due to the 2 captains keeping on them. I mean, that's, to me, we had a good crew. As much as you didn't like it, make them take the test, make them get promoted, make them have their own company like yours. So I always wanted that. I always wanted those guys to have their company because I knew they'd be as good, if not better than me. So I wanted them out there, it made the fire department better. So I was always pushing them, take the test. Here's my notes. Here's what I did. We'd spend an hour upstairs, questions and answers, get promoted. I hate to see you go, but there's somebody out there that needs you. So anyway.
Yeah. If there's an opportunity. No, that's fine. I appreciate it. It makes my job easier. Makes my job a heck of a lot easier. I'm more than content to kind of sit back with any guests, as I mentioned before, and let them steer the ship. Now, before I move on to your time as a deputy chief, chief of ops, and of course, providing resources down at Ground Zero, question from Jim Pavada in the chat. He says, Mike, could you please ask the chief if he could share a memorable story about dispatcher Ira Rubin?
Oh, my God. We don't have enough time for the stories, but Ira Rubin was one of my closest friends. He was a buff. He was a dispatcher. Knew more about the city than anybody ever could. Knew every street, one way. Address would come in, he could tell you all about the building. He was great he did lots of things for the fire service, donated lots of his time. I don't know how else to put it. He was just one of the great human beings that I ever met in my life. He was the only Jewish bagpiper that I knew. And he used to pipe with us for a while. He had an immense collection of memorabilia in a storage unit. And I used to go up to his apartment, and it was, if you know what the hoarding apartment looked like. His apartment was a hoarding apartment, but you were stepping through fire memorabilia, helmets from the 1700s, trumpets that firemen used in Boston, and he knew everybody wherever I went. When I went out of town to speak, or when I had my training company, people would say, "Hey, Ira? How's Ira doing? How's that?" And he died suddenly, fairly young, and huge amount of firemen came to his service. I flew back, and it was just it was a sad day. But Ira was, again, he was like so many of the dispatchers, and he would, because we were good friends, so he would tip me. He would just get on the radio if a box came in before they set it up and everything, and phones lit up. He'd call me. He'd say, "Dispatch Battalion 2." I said, "Go ahead, Battalion. Go ahead, dispatch." He says, "Hey," he goes, "head south towards Stegman Parkway," and I knew what that meant. Box was coming in, and we were getting calls. Or he would call and say, "Hey, Chief, you're going to work." He just knew. He'd give you tips like that. 2:00 in the morning, my phone would ring, and it would just ring like 3 times and stop ringing. It was Ira. Before I got my clothes on, I knew I was going to work. That was Ira Rubin. He just knew. And if you were relocated and weren't sure, Ira would say, 3 blocks, make a right on Eagle. Go down 2 blocks, make a left. You'll be looking at the fire. So, it was that type of guy. So into the fire service. I mean, I've never seen anybody to this day so into the fire service that wasn't a fireman. But
Right.
he belonged to the Gun Club. He came out to all the multiples, with the Gun. That was our rehab unit before it became, quote unquote, something you needed. He would come out with the Gun Club. They came out every multiple, every good job, every high angle, you name it. They would come out. Hot chocolate, lemonade, pizzas if it was a long job. But he would come out with them. He was just a unique individual. I don't think I'll ever meet anybody. I know, you could say some names in New York City that were like him, and he knew them all. I think he was a honorary battalion chief or something in New York City. He was an honorary chief in Jersey City. Just did a lot of work in and around the fire service. So. Yeah, so I don't know if that answers the question, but he was. I could go on with stories about him with fires and queuing us up. Not just me. If you knew him, if you were friends with him, you knew you were going to work before you got there. He was an amazing person. But yeah, Ira was something. So I hope that answers your question. So.
I hope so too. I think it does. So thanks, Jim, for submitting it. So a few things to hit on here between being a deputy chief and ultimately chief of ops. So chief of training for a little while, citywide tour commander for a little while, deputy coordinator of OEM and Homeland Security. 3 very different responsibilities, but rewarding all the same, I imagine. Tell me about each of them if you can.
Yeah. I was chief of operations when I got promoted. I was a junior deputy. There were 2 spots open. Mike Turpak and I got promoted on the same day. He was 1 on the list. I was 2. And he took chief of training, which was fine. And chief of operations, which typically back in the day was the senior deputy. He'd be the number 2 guy in the department. But Rick Eggers, who was the chief, again, another mentor of mine, classmate, great chief, one of the all-time great chiefs. He went around to all the deputies and said, "Listen, do you want to be my chief of operations?" And there were 5 of them. There were 4 covering the shift. They were the shift commanders, and behind their backs they were called Prince of the City, because they owned the city when they worked. They owned the city. They were supposed to start out on every struck box, which was a structure fire. And some did, some didn't. But it just, they knew when to go. So anyway, he went around to all of them and said, "Listen, I need a chief of operations." And he asked them, according to the union contract, he couldn't force them in, but if everybody turned down the job, he could take the junior person in that rank and put him in that position. So I became chief of operations because all the senior deputies, being chief of the city, and the deputies were working they were on a shift. They were working 24 on, 72 off. Who wants to give that up to work 5 days a week? So, I was sort of forced into it, but I love working for Rick. And what he told his secretary, he said, "From now on, nobody comes into my office until they go through Bobby first." He was one of the few people who wouldn't call me Butch. So that was the deal. I had an office down from him down the hallway, and they would come see me before they saw him. And lots of times I could figure it out. And he was just great. He was a mild-mannered guy, did a lot behind the scenes that nobody knew. Really stood up for the fire service at City Hall. And just an all-around great guy. So I did that for, I don't know, maybe a year and a half, 2 years. It was great because I had a city car, and I was on any multiple alarm or unusual occurrence, I responded. And that I liked, because And I didn't. When I went, I didn't. I never. I took over like one fire, I think, but the rest of them were just the deputies. The deputies had 30 years, 35 years on the job, and they were great. So I would just not sit around. I would handle the press. I would handle councilmen coming to the fire if it was in their district. I would handle all that. And I would always say to the deputy, do you need anything else? Can I get you anything else? So I was just in the background, but I went, and it was great day and night. They paid me at home. I'd go. And a lot of times they would call me and say, listen, this thing's going to get knocked pretty soon. So I would just kind of monitor. But all the bigger events I went to, that was pretty good. I had a say in a lot of things that we were going to do. I was chief operations when they had that horrendous tragic fire in New York City where the guys jumped out the window.
Black Sunday, yeah.
Yeah, and bailout ropes became the thing, And so we looked into it. We couldn't afford the top-notch thing. But we found something that was just as good, and we got them. And I had, at the time, 5 battalion chiefs that were promoted, and they were going through the battalion chiefs class, whatever it was. But the 5 of them came to the training school. I had made a class up for the bailout ropes, an hour in the classroom about it, and the manufacturer sent somebody. And then we had 2 vacant buildings, and the battalion chiefs would go out. They learned everything there was to know about it. They used it themselves, and they went out and they taught the rest of the city. Everybody had one. It was in their turnout gear, and eventually they went to the New York City type. We see everybody standing around now with a big carabiner hanging out of their coat or hook onto their belt. But we started out with something a little less than that, but it worked fine. It worked great. We had a wall built at a warehouse that the city gave the fire department, and we had a couple windows, and you had to come to get certified every year, I guess it was, and again, it was just I was happy to do that program. It was needed. I wanted to get it done as soon as possible. I always, we were training guys in the pro beat when I was down there before we had the bailout ropes, using your hand as a descending device. I mean, it was a way of doing that. It's better than burning stuff, so you could wrap that rope around you, anchor it off, and
whatever you got to do, just don't die.
And it was the funny story, real quick. The Hispanic Society in Hudson County asked me to go with them to the Dominican Republic and teach firemen there. And I had a course about rescuing trapped firemen and how to get yourself out of trouble. So I went down there, and I didn't speak the language very much, but all the guys with me were great, interpreting it, and it was all hands on. So I didn't have to say anything. So anyway, we did everything, and showed them how to put the hose line down a hole, and the guy trapped hang onto it, and you can pop him out like a jack in the box, all that stuff. And then I didn't want to do the bailout, but I demoed it. So I went up on the second floor of this firehouse, tied off the rope, put it around my waist, and slid down with my gloves as a descending device. And I swear, when I got down to the ground, there were people making a sign of the cross, like I was some kind of miracle worker that I could get out of this building. And then, all the guys in the Hispanic Society came to me and said, listen, I want to do this. I said, well, you guys show them. I said, it's not I don't want it to be part of my course. And they did it. And they were there for the next day for 8 hours. Everybody did it 3 or 4 times from the second floor. And it was, it was kind of, because they were a department that, when they ran out of air bottles, they had to drive 35 miles to get them filled. So they didn't go until they were all empty. It was really, they had live-ins. They had the military was kind of in control of it, but it was very fulfilling to go down there and pass along things that they could use, hands-on things. That was my whole, my whole training life was. And I came back from that with a big smile on my face. I said, maybe we could do that someplace else, but that was very fulfilling. I'm glad I got a chance to do that. So anyway, that was just back to the rope. So I got to do that. Mike and I got together, and we did the first search rope program and rescue and trap firefighter program. When rapid intervention it was called FAST back then. We followed New York City again. Yeah. Could go over to New York City. They gave me their SOP. They showed me their training. Mike and I wrote something for us. We did it in Jersey City. Every company had to go through it. And then we gave out rope bags. Every company had 1 or 2 rope bags. The rescue had 2 or 3. And we made it. If you get a commercial building, smoke-filled commercial building, somebody had to carry that rope with them the whole time, just in case. And we had some some guys got out and said, hey, listen, if it wasn't for that rope, I don't know if we would have got out. And then we had the flip side. A good friend of mine, Glenn, worked in a rescue. Didn't look bad, put the rope down, went into this commercial building, got really crappy in a hurry, and they crawled out. And Glenn said, I'll never do that again. It just, you never know. You never know when you're going to need it. So, Mike and I got to do that. That was pretty neat. So we got some things started that I think under other circumstances, there wasn't anybody doing that. And Mike, as a chief of training, really got that in gear. And him and I became partners in a lot of things. I was just getting my training company. No, my training company had been going for a few years by then. And then he got a spot online. He was next to take a spot, so he became the deputy, the shift commander on Group A. I moved to chief of training. The next deputy, went to my spot, and I enjoyed chief of training. Again, I was looking forward to it. I put 2 classes through. I put the first class with 2 women through. That was pretty neat. I tried to fire a guy who was incompetent, and the law department wouldn't let me. but it was. It was. I made it tough. It's something like about the training academy. I don't care where you go. There's a lot of safety built into it, and I don't think. We were burning hay, we were burning, things like that a lot, and smoking and fire. But you know what? The kids going in there weren't afraid because they knew they were in a training episode. They knew that what we were doing. We told them there are 3 or 4 firemen front and back. If anything happens, they're going to come right in there. It was, we had these blowers. So telling them all that, and they weren't afraid. We couldn't. I don't know anybody that built afraid into their training. You know what I'm saying? It just you can never get that afraid. I mean, and then we started all these fancy training academies, which were great. Gas fired. The guy standing there with all kinds of gauges in front of him. He could get that propane going. He could pump big smoke machines. You can pump that smoke in there. It was non-toxic. That was great. But you couldn't teach scared. You couldn't teach the anxiety of being trapped. I think there was no way of doing that other than if we could get exempt from burning Class A material. Not to get anybody hurt, but a lot of guys aren't going to agree with me. But Mike, you're going through training. Are they going to put you in a situation that you're going to be so scared? You're really going to pay attention, or you're going to be so scared that maybe you don't want to go any further? I don't know how far you've gone along in your basic training, but we just can't teach. You can't teach the anxiety, and you can't teach a guy to be really frightened for his life. And so when it happens, you kind of hope. I mean, it happened to me. The first fire I went to didn't resemble anything I did in Bergen County or in Jersey City. It didn't resemble anything. It was
the real deal is always the biggest education.
Yeah. So and the captain just not yet. We're crawling along with this 2.5. I wanted to. It was getting hot, and he said, "Not yet, not." But so putting the kids through training, I made it as realistic as I can. But I just watching them. But we had a very, I modeled it after the military. And again, there's guys out there writing articles. The military shouldn't be part of the fire service. That's bull. You know what? But that's what we did. It was you listen to orders. If you had we were putting 30, 40 guys out at a clip, guys and girls. And if you had a squad leader, he was in charge of you. You had a problem, the squad leader went to one of the instructors, not the whole, and just everything. If I showed up, I was the chief of training, so I would show up once in a while. But you know what? If I showed up, or anybody showed up with a white shirt, you pin yourself against the wall in the hallway and didn't move until they passed you. That was our tradition. And like it or not, guy with a white shirt walked into a room to give a class. You stood up until he said at ease. Mm-hmm. It just.
Way it should be.
We wanted that to carry over to the firehouse. When you got there, you know what? You had a leader, and you had to listen to him. You would appreciate what he had in his head. He was gonna keep you safe. He was gonna tell you the right thing to do. So, I think it's still that way. I think it's still that way. If you're gonna get rid of a guy, that's the place you can legally get rid of him. Once he's on a job. I mean, unless you shoot somebody, you're not getting rid of them. So anyway,
Union strong.
That's my thought on training, and The other thing that Mike and I were able to do, we started a vacant building training program. When they came from the Proby school now, very quickly, our training school is, while I was there, became 250 townhouses. The city sold the property. It was on the waterfront on Hackensack River. They sold that to a developer, and we had to send a Proby school. We were sending them down to Middletown, New Jersey. We were sending them to a lot to Bergen County Fire Academy. It was a great academy. Or Passaic, whoever would take us. And we only went to places that let our instructors go there with them. And they were all in agreement. They would have a lead instructor. Because we had to teach them a little differently than up in Bergen County, up in a different area than Jersey City. But so when they came through there, then they would come to Jersey City for another 2 weeks for vacant building training. And we had so many vacant buildings that each class we'd break up, and I'd have 5 or 6 good instructors, and we would screw these doors shut, screw the windows shut, 4 or 5 smoke machines going in, and we cover holes up in and they had to learn how to put a fire out in a vacant building. A little bit different than walking into somebody's house in Ridgewood, New Jersey, or in Dumont, New Jersey. You had to look out for these things. They didn't get that in Proby school, so they went through that. Half the class would do that. The other half of class would go to the firehouse and spend the day learning the pump, learning the ladder. And after 2 or 3 days, then they would drive the engine. They would drive the truck, and then they'd flip. And we started that. And I don't know if that's still going. I don't think there's any vacant buildings left in Jersey City. And if there are, they're worth too much money. But we got that. So again, I had the opportunity, pretty free hand in training and in chief operations to start anything that was going to enhance the capabilities of the Jersey City Fire Department. And it just went on and on. And I even got the union came to me a couple times and said, you know what, all this hands-on training. He said, nobody's complaining about it. He goes, the first program you ever ran, or the fire department ever ran, but somebody didn't call the union and complain. He said, every guy loved it because it was hands-on. 20 minutes, all hands-on, and they loved it. I don't care if they came from a slow company. They loved out there doing. They loved doing. So anyway.
Absolutely. I appreciate you diving into that. Before we get to, of course, you retired ultimately in 2009. Of course, 8 years prior to that was the terrorist attacks on the Trade Center in 2001. So just take me through your day that day. And then, of course, like many departments in the surrounding area, really from around the country, getting down to the scene and do whatever you could to help. Yeah,
it was I'm going to tell you right off the bat, it took me a lot of time to get over what I perceived as a major failure. Now, there were John Austin, a 3rd Battalion Chief. And Mike, I'll tell you this, and it's the truth. Jersey City is the only fire department that got called for mutual aid to ground zero in the entire country. No one else got called there. They might have went there, which is fine. I don't want to get into that. Other departments got relocated to some of the vacant fire stations, but we were the only. We got that from the following year from whoever the chief was. I forget his name, but he came over to our medal day, and he told us that. And he said, I love what you guys did. And so Johnny Austin went over first. He went over, and our mutual aid response was a chief, the safety chief, or the safety officer. It was the captain, the acting safety chief, and the mass service unit, because the safety officer went with him. So there were 5 of them that went over. They survived both collapses. All right. I went over with Gil Turner, captain from the training school. My chief called me. I just got done with a 24-hour shift. Chief Vegas called me. He said, get down to fire headquarters right away. I went down there. He gave me Gil Turner. He gave me a Suburban or some kind of car like that. And he said, you get over there and go to the command post and tell them anything they want. We'll start amassing task forces at the Holland Tunnel. He said, get to the command post. That was my job. And so Gil and I, we got delayed just before we got to the Holland Tunnel. Chief Vegas called us back, and I was really upset. And he said, we're going to fill your car up with dust masks and sterile water. He goes, Johnny Austin said everybody's blinded with the swirling stuff. The South Tower had fallen. So I got delayed about 20 minutes, half hour, got to the tunnel with Gil. The Port Authority wouldn't let me go through. They were locked and loaded. It looked like I was back in Vietnam. These guys had long guns, machine guns, you name it. They were telling me that they thought there might be some bombs in it. I said, listen, I have to get there. I said, Chief Vegas wanted me to go to the command post. They got a lieutenant. The lieutenant said, listen, you can go through there. Nobody's in there. Ride the Senate divider. He says, but the bomb dogs haven't been through there yet. So Gil and I looked at each other and said, well, take the barrier down. We're going. And we went through the Holland Tunnel about 90 miles an hour. Anybody that knows the New York side, when you get through the Holland Tunnel, it's a really sharp right-hand turn. And we skidded through there. We might have dented the rear left side of the car a little bit, but I told Gil, we're never putting this on paper ever. Yeah, one of the funny things that happened. But so while we were doing that, the North Tower fell. And now they couldn't get a hold of Johnny Austin and any of the guys. They're calling. They couldn't get. So I called him and said, we're through the tunnel. He answered me. There were thousands of people on West Street. Gil and I are trying to get down. We got as far as we could. We got out of the car. I said to John, let's meet, do a head count. He was still missing a couple people at the time. I think the chauffeur of the mass service unit, and Joe Lavero, who was a fire dispatcher, he went over with the 3rd Battalion, which I thought was dispatchers on occasion when they were off duty, they would ride into a box if they were in a firehouse. We were going to New York City. The 3rd Battalion had the New York City radio in it, so we knew communication was going to be trouble. So the deputy okayed, one of the dispatchers to go. So he went over with the 3rd Battalion. He was missing. I got there with Gil. We couldn't drive the car anymore. And as I started going down the street, I had my gear on. Gil had his gear on. There was people laying all over the street. I wanted to get down to ground zero. I didn't know it was ground zero. I wanted to get down to, they told me the command post was in the area of West and Vesey, and that was right by the North Tower. And I'm thinking that's where I'm going to, so I said to Gil, come on, we'll go. So Gil stopped a little bit. I went down a little further. But I was approached by no less than, I would say, 24 New York City firemen, lieutenants, captains, no white helmets. I was for quite a while the only white helmet walking the street. And all of them walked up to me at one point in time and said, Chief, what do you want us to do? And I said over and over again, listen, I'm a battalion chief in Jersey City. I'm trying to get to the command post. Go back to West and right where City College was, City Community College was, West and, that'll come to me in a minute. But back up about 3 blocks. I said, I think EMS is setting up there because these guys were bloody. They looked like they were in a bar fight. They were bloody. They had pulled themselves out of the rubble. And they kept asking me. And I wanted to take my helmet off and hide it because I couldn't tell them what to do. And that I perceived as just, but I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know. The only thing I knew was that EMS was setting up back there Western Chambers. And so I got down there. The walkway was, there were guys still trying to. I'll be brief about this, but I have a whole bunch of audio tape from when I was there, calling back and calling Johnny Austin and the guys, trying to figure out where everybody is. I was trying to get to the mass service unit truck, which was right near it was right between an engine and 2 ladder trucks, right near the North Tower. Our truck, that's how soon we got there. It was parked right there. They were filling bottles. Lots of New York City guys took our bottles into the building. Some off-duty guys came and took our bottles and ran into the building. And when the North Tower came, and destroyed that. That was the end of that filling bottles. And our guys ran, of course, like everybody else. But I got down there, and there's an audio tape, clear as a bell, where Johnny Austin calls me. He goes, battalion, it's called 6 Alpha. They gave me a staff designation. And let me back up a little bit. The chief sent me over there, not to help set up anything other than he knew that I had coordinated all the training with Chief Downey and a couple other of the training people for Jersey City. When a spot opened up and we could send 2 or 3, I would coordinate that with Chief Downey, or I would coordinate that with one of the captains from the rescue if they were going to do something in the tunnel. So, and the chief knew that I knew a lot of the head guys in New York City from Firehouse. Then we had them come and speak. I mean, it wasn't unusual. So the chief figured I would know somebody, and he said to me, go to the command post, find Chief Downey, and tell him we're available. That was his last words to me. So, couldn't find the command post. I had called Johnny Salker. I couldn't find him. He said he was like, he had walked 3 or 4 blocks north to try to reorganize. And I got down there and he called me and said, meet me at wherever he said the street was. And I said, I can't right now. I said, I'm helping 10 or 12 FDNY guys out of the rubble. And I wasn't helping them out of it. They had gotten themselves, it was serene. It was, these guys had pulled themselves out. They were white they couldn't see. They were asking if I had water. I was just trying to guide them to the right place, telling them where to go, hooking them up with another guy that was, and the whole time, all they saw was a white helmet. So they figured I was, you know what? The New York City guys were unbelievable just because I had the white helmet on. Whatever I said, they did. I just got tired of saying I was from Jersey City. Some of them ignored that and said, I don't care, tell me what to do. And for the most part, I just tell them, but, so we got these guys out. We wound up over and they were yelling for help at Building 7, getting the people out of Building 7 out of the lobby. We did stuff like that. But then eventually somebody grabbed me and said, the command post is gone. I said, what do you mean? He said, it's gone. He said, the North Tower part of it landed on it, and he said, they're all gone. There was nobody.
That's right, yeah.
And I'm thinking, how's that possible? My brain couldn't fathom that. But that was, so I got on my cell phone. My cell phone worked. I don't know why. Nobody else did. And I called him. I told him I didn't want to put that on the air. So he said, well, do what you can. So, we helped, like I said, in and around Building 7. Gil Turner and I, John and his guys, they got a 2.5-inch hose, I think it was, or 1 3/4 inch, hooked to a hydrant and looped it over a light pole. And that was a decon site for hundreds and hundreds of people, civilians and firemen, cleaning them up, washing their eyes out, washing they just lost track of how many people came through there just to clean them up so they could see where they were going. So that they were doing that, and we were just, I was radioing reports back. They just, there were civilians on hose lines putting out fires, and ambulances and fire trucks were burning. There were buses on fire. I was trying to push Vietnam out of my system because it was just death everywhere. I mean, you couldn't see it, but you knew it. And at one point, I jumped around a little bit. I called my wife, and I couldn't find Mickey Convoy. Mickey, I know him and his family for years. And I went to Rescue 3. I pried the door open to Rescue 3. It was under the north walkway. I saw the writing list, and it was 6 or 7 guys from that night. And I recognized several of the names, but Mickey wasn't on it. And then somebody said to me, well, the day and the night shift, they come over here with 12 guys on the rescue, and somebody said they heard him on the radio, and now they didn't hear him. And I, not that I was worried about one person, but when you have a friend gone. So, but he survived. I met him later on on the backside, and we saw each other. We hugged, we cried. I was happy to see him. I was looking for Johnny Salker. He was a longtime friend. I heard him on the radio later on, getting his friend out of the North Tower. Those guys that got trapped.
Yeah, Chief Jonas.
Yeah. That
Captain
was
at the time.
Johnny Salker was the godfather of one of Jay Jonas's friends, who I became friends with him later on. Through John, and playing my bagpipes at his firehouse one afternoon. But anyway, so that's kind of what we did. It was chaotic. I had there's another radio transmission calling back to New Jersey to the chief saying 2 cops just grabbed me. They're dragging me over to Stuyvesant High School. They got a report of bombs in the school. And I was just, again, from that point on, I knew you'll never be able to be ready for everything. It's just, in my mind, I don't care from that point on, you could never be ready for everything. I don't care how well trained and how equipped you are. So they dragged me over there, and most of the kids got out. There were kids in the gym. Johnny, I think with John and the guys, my other guys, came down and took the kids out the back and walked them up the Hudson River. We calmed them down, said it was everything had settled down. But when I got on the radio, I had to call John and tell him, listen, I'm going over to the school with these 2 cops. They literally had me off the ground almost by the shoulders because I was the only white helmet for a while. And I couldn't, I didn't know what to say to them. I knew nothing about bombs other than if they went off, they were going to kill a lot of people. But under the circumstances, it was almost believable. So, it turned out not to be. Calmed these cops down. Went back. Gil and I went back. I think we went back over to Building 7. We were just, and then things started to happen. 2-star chief came off duty. He got there. Other chief officers started coming. I kind of stayed in the background because the last thing I needed was some mutual aid chief putting in. Until I'm fast forwarding a little bit. Until Chief Eggers called me and said, "Get your phone to work again." And sometimes I had to walk like a block, so I got the phone to work. And he said, "Got a pencil and paper?" Yeah. I said, "I got my pad right here. I'm going to give you 6 names, badge numbers, and companies." And I'm like, "What the hell is he talking about?" Gave me the names, companies, badge number, where they were working that night. I think there were 7. He said, "They're all in Jersey City hospitals. There's a guy from the firefighter outside their door from the union. Where they could, they've contacted the family, gave them an update, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, it was like, what the hell? Now, I don't realize at this point, 6,000 to 7,000 people that survived the collapses went to Jersey City's waterfront on boats. I didn't know they were building this. The Coast Guard was building the biggest flotilla in history, and that's how many people went across the river. They were doing CPR on a couple. So anyway, so now I make my way back to it looks like more of a command post now. They got a big board. I think it was a piece of cardboard. It might have been, writing down who's left. I grabbed this captain. I said, "Hey, tell the chief I got some information for him." I went up to the chief and said, "Hey, this guy from Jersey City." And the chief said, "No, not now. I can't talk to him now." I didn't know what the hell to do. So I said to the captain, I said, "Listen, some of your guys are in a Jersey City firehouse, in a hospital." So he went and whispered to the chief. Chief turned around and said, "Get up here." And I gave him the list. And the first thing he said to me, "How did they get there?" And you know what? I still hadn't figured that out. And I think Gil Turner said, "By boat." And he said, he was like, he just gave this like, holy shit. So I said, "I'll be back." And he went back to work. I mean, they were getting their incident command system back and running, I would say, in an hour or 2. People tell me 2 or 3 days. That's bullshit. I mean, I saw it with my own eyes. They started to reorganize right away. He was sending out people, radio them back. There's an engine works here. This engine's working there. There's 10 guys here. You know what? And they were putting things together. So I don't want to hear that it took them days to get going. You know what people forget about sometimes? I think on that day, New York City had over 12,000 firemen. They could have had 5,000 on that pile and still manned every firehouse with off-duty guys. And when you really look back on it, now I'm not saying they didn't need the help, but this guy knew what he had, and he knew what he had coming. He had hundreds and hundreds of firemen showing up every minute, and it was just I wasn't going to bother him. So and that's how it went on. And I get the second list, and I went back, and then finally they said, "Listen, bring a task force over, and tell them to bring anything that'll cut metal." Because we got people trapped in the metal because it was still nobody had figured out that nobody was alive yet. And so I called, and they sent over a task force, and I think a lieutenant, or I forget what rank he was. He got assigned to the Jersey City task force, and they didn't move until he said move. And then later on, Moore came over and got assigned somebody, and they didn't do anything until they were told, and that's how it went. And then there was an odd phone call I made. I walked away, and there were about 8 or 10 New York City firemen who made it out of the debris, and they saw me talking on the phone. They all gathered around, and I didn't know what they were doing. I'm talking to my wife, and I actually said to my wife, I guess it was about 2 hours into it or so, I said, "Diane, everybody's dead. There's nobody alive. There's nobody to rescue. There's nobody trapped. There's nothing." And she said, "No, I'm watching TV. They said there's hundreds." I said, "Diane, I'm telling you, there's nobody alive." I said, so she didn't believe me because I guess, the press kept going, 400 or 500 people, didn't realize it. And then these guys, I said, I'll call you later. And as soon as I said, "I'll call you later," they all came within like 6 inches of me and said, "Chief, can we use your phone?" And I passed the phone around. Either they didn't have a cell phone that worked or didn't have one, and they all called their families and said, listen, I'm alive, I'm well. That went on for about 20 minutes. They gave me the phone back, and they all just kind of gave me a little hug and left, and I never saw them again. But it was just, it wasn't butt in anytime you want, because you know what, I'll just but I'm almost nearly in. Gil and I were there for almost 12 hours, and that's pretty much what we did. We walked around Building 7 until it fell. We knew it was going to fall. We knew it was empty. They came around with bullhorns. We all backed off. We watched it fall. 20 minutes after it fell, everybody went back to doing what they were doing. It was like a non-event, if you could believe that. The third high-rise to collapse in an incident, and nobody realizes that it was the third high. There were 3 buildings, not 2. And we just walked around it. It landed in the only place it could land and not touch another building. And New York City did a great job of getting everybody back. And once it collapsed, everybody went back to work. I mean, they were still going in places. I mean, I saw New York City guys go into crevices and holes that, in the normal circumstances, the creaking and things were falling and glass were falling out of the windows still. And it was, but they weren't giving up hope. It probably was another day or so, but it was just in my mind, from what I could see, it was nothing could have survived any of that. So, like I said, it was there 12 hours. I went home for a little bit, laid in bed, for about an hour. I got up and Diane said to me, "Where are you going?" I said, "I gotta go back. I can't." Then I went back and Chief Eggers didn't want me to go back because I did something off color. Last story I tell, and then we'll go to something else. But when I got back, after 12 hours, I walked into fire headquarters, and Timmy Carney, who was a deputy on the chief's staff, they were standing there. And just as I got back, and by the way, Tim Carney just died about a year and a half ago of cancer related to being at 9/11. Anyway, and my golf buddy for years. So they were standing there, and Chief Eggers said to me, "Bobby," he says, "you got to go back over to the hospital." It was what was the famous hospital that was there? St. Vincent's. Had one of the greatest ER centers, I guess, in the city. And I read later on that the doctor said there were 2 kind of people that came here: people walking wounded that just walked into the ER or dead. There was no in between. They only had like a dozen people come in that day to the emergency room because you couldn't get there. The only place you could go, the survivors, the injured, the only place they could go was on the boat to Jersey City at the beginning. They'd been in Hoboken and then in Bayonne, but at the beginning, if you can imagine, 5,000 or 6,000 people in every medical shape that you could think of. So he said to me, they found Joe. He's in the emergency room. He passed away before they could get him, up to surgery and whatnot. But they need somebody to identify the body before they release the name to us, for us to release it. Now, I knew Joe. I knew his family. I knew his wife, his daughter. I knew him for a long time. His brother Mike went on a job with me. And I was over there for about 12 hours. And Chief Eggers said to me, "Jump in the car, go back over and identify the body." And I couldn't go. I said no. It's the only time I ever disobeyed an order from the chief of department. But it was to the point where I'm going home. And I just turned around and left. And Timmy Carney came and grabbed me. And he said, "Bobby, come back in." He said, "Sit down, have a cup of coffee, and just relax." He goes, "We got somebody else to go." And it was a few weeks later, I said to Timmy, I said, "What changed your mind?" And he said, I watched you the whole time you were here, and I just watched your eyes. And he said, "There's no way you could go back." He said, "You were shot, you were done." And he told Eggers that. And Eggers said, "Yeah." I said, "You're right." He said, "We can't make this kid go back." So Gil Turner and I just, we hung out. We stayed the rest of the night. They had a third alarm at like midnight, and up in the Heights. But it was the only thing I regret. I should have got enough. I should have found the faith or something to go back. I couldn't. So to this day, I kind of regret it. But another chief went over and so that was that. And then I went back the next day. The next day the chief wouldn't let me go back. He assigned me to the. We were doing a rescue mission through the PATH subway system. They thought there might be people in the mall over there where the train went from Jersey City. The subway went from Jersey City to the World Trade Center site. and there was like 20,000 people there in the morning because it was loaded with stores and whatnot, But they all got evacuated. We didn't know that, but the Port Authority were able to pump the water down to a manageable level. And if you can believe it or not, our rescue, the rescue teams that went over paddled over to New York City in Zodiacs to get over and they got over there and everybody had been evacuated. But that was New York City called us. That was the rescue mission. Get over to that mall and see what you find. So, and we did. And that was amazing in itself. And so, like I said, Gil and I went back. The chief had signed me there. He didn't want me to go back over. And, later on, somebody else came to relieve me. And I called the Port Authority and I asked for a Port Authority cop to come pick me up at fire headquarters. I was supposed to be just sitting around or just helping the on-duty deputy and have my gear. And Port Authority cop pick me up. And I said, hey, I got to go over there. And lights and sirens through the tunnel. And I went over and I met some of the guys. And, Jersey City guys, we went over by boat after that. We had a couple tugboats that they came to us and said, we'll bring over as many guys. And they got a barge. And we'd have 10, 15 guys on a barge and 10 or 15 guys on a boat. And they would go over there, relieve 30 guys. And we kept that going on the boat. And that went on for days. And the firehouses started filling up with volunteer firemen from all over the country. My firehouse was filled up with Jimmy Crawford, who was a lieutenant from Pittsburgh. I know him, so he went to my firehouse. And firehouse, they put these guys up until they couldn't get across the river. And then when they did, they left. And we had hundreds of firemen in Jersey City camped out in some of the vacant office buildings and whatnot. It was a lot of stories. And that was it. And, the rest is history. And I went downhill a little bit after that. It was, I just didn't understand some of the things that happened and kind of got mixed with the Vietnam thing. And I finally went for some treatment and got things straightened out. But I was headed in the wrong direction for a while. So anyway, that's my story.
I'm glad you told it. I knew he was down there. I just didn't know Chief Alston had gotten down there while the towers were still burning. I thought he had gotten down there later in the day. I didn't know he was actually down there before the collapses. So hopefully we'll end it.
The mutual. I have the box going out on one of the audios that was given to me. The box went out right after the second plane hit the tower. So that's when they called us. And he was there. He lived through both. Those guys lived through both. There's some unbelievable pictures. But
when he's done, and when she's done in New Haven at the end of the month, sometime down the road, once he's settled into retirement, I'll reach out to him, get him on the show.
Yeah.
Hopefully he can tell that story and other stories too from his career. So moving ahead, 2009, by that point, you had your fill of just pretty much everything. And did you age out in 2009, or was it your choice to say?
I had 30 years. I turned 60. And in my mind, I had always planned, and my wife knew it, I was going to get out at 65. Again, because my father died. All his brothers died of heart attacks at some point in time, during their lives.
No.
So I just said to her, at 65, I was one on the chief of department. I'd taken the chief of department's test. And I was two. Mike O'Reilly took the job, and he had come to me at some point and said, listen, I think I'm going to retire. It's it wasn't what he expected, and I knew it wouldn't be what I expected. So I walked on the job. He told me he was going to get out, and I just decided, you know what? I left. I just and I was ISO had called me, and I had turned them down. They called me a second time when I had decided that was it. So I had 34 years in Jersey City. I had 3 in Weehawken, and ISO, Mike Waters, vice president. I mean, ISO was under the umbrella of a company called Bravest Analytics. They're all over the world. They're a multinational company. Do a lot for the insurance industry. They do and that's ISO became ISO because the insurance industry 25, 30 years ago made them. The insurance industry got together and made ISO because they needed somebody to grade fire protection so they could rate them. So they could, and it was ISO actually worked for all the insurance companies across the country. And then they broke out as a private company, and they, and then they went they were actually like contracts with about 95% or so of the insurance companies across the country. They get their analytics, the data and analytics from ISO. And I was the first to lead that division in ISO from the fire service, which I find very unusual that they went that long. But Mike Waters was the vice president of ISO. He was the volley chief in South Jersey, and that'll come to me in a minute. That'll spit out. And he had come down to 3 or 4 years in a row. He had come down to Firehouse Expo when I started speaking. He liked what I said. I was from New Jersey, and he thought I'd be a good fit to run that department within ISO. And they had started the process. I had to go through meeting with everybody, answering questions and everything you do. And I was a fish out of water, Mike, I could tell you. I went from being in the fire service for 35 years to sitting down at meetings. I went right into upper management, senior management. I was sitting down with the CEO of Bravest Analytics that was, known all over the world. I'm sitting down in these meetings, and my God, I was, I'd been through a lot of fires, but I'm telling you, my knees were shaking. I didn't know what the hell I got into, but I just decided the worst thing that could happen is they fire me, and I take my pension. And I had a training company that was, we didn't get into that, but maybe another time. I had a training company traveling, at a base of like 5 or 6 guys. It was some of the training programs. I had 15, 20 instructors. We were doing collapse training. I had guys from the USAR team in Florida working with me, and my training company was just off the chart. I was going to say off the books. It was off the books too, but it was off the charts. I had fire departments asking me to train all 4 groups, and I would say to them, "Hey, you see the price I gave you for one group? It's 4 times that." So it was a lot of fun. But anyway, I just I did what I did in the fire service. I used my my leadership abilities that I had in the fire service that worked, and I used it in the big business, and it worked.
Yeah.
It worked. And Mike was the vice president. Bobby Shoemaker was one of the top guys there. He was a volunteer in Bloomingdale. The head engineer, Kevin Kuntz, he was a fire chief in South Brunswick, or one of the Brunswicks. He's down in Gettysburg now. He's on like 10 NFP. So the fire service was embedded in ISO, and they just didn't let anybody know that. That was the first thing I did. I let everybody know. People coming to grade you are part of the fire service. They've been in it. I tried to hire I wanted to be part of the job requirement, being a volunteer fireman or retired fireman. They wouldn't let me do that. But I most of them came with some kind of fire department background. So I did well. They told me, I had the job, and they gave me about a 15-page document. And they said, take it home over the weekend and see if you like it. Talk to Diane about it. And the salary was in there, and bonuses and stock options. I didn't understand half of it, but I saw the bottom line. I saw the salary, and I almost asked them for a pen that moment to sign it. I didn't need to bring it home. But it was a lot of work. It was a tremendous amount of work, and I did it for like 5 years or so. And it was a lot of traveling, a lot of speaking to insurers, to board of directors and insurance companies, the fire chiefs, the fire commissioners, the hierarchy in every state, insurance commissioners. That was my job, and it was good. I got to see a lot of. I got to see the American Fire Service like nobody else could see it. And when you see it on paper, the majority of the fire departments across the United States, at least when I was there, didn't have enough manpower, didn't have enough equipment. As good as it looks, you get down into the South, you get into Montana. Back then, there were fire departments that didn't have enough air packs for everybody. Had 3 radios, hand-me-down, and they were going to fires and they were putting them out. That was the biggest. I couldn't believe it. I thought everybody was Dumont. I thought everybody was West Milford. Had everything, but the greater part of the fire service, when you look at the whole grading schedule, they were like class 6s and 7s and 8s because they didn't have this, they didn't have that. And I I was really shocked. I was blind to the fact that that was going on. It really was. And I tried to fix that the best I could. But, now you're talking about money. You're talking about manpower. You're talking about buying fire trucks. But I tried to put a dent in it. And I got to change the fire suppression rating schedule, which was the Bible that the fire departments, not only fire departments, but the water departments and the dispatch centers had to follow. And I got, well, not me. I had fire protection engineers. I had people 10 times smarter than me. But my push was for the entire American Fire Service to be graded by the NFPA standards instead of having two separate lists of what you needed. ISO just had their own. So that's what we did. We sort of put ISO's list of things and criteria for water and communications in the garbage can. And we went by ISO, the American Water Works Association, and the American APCO, American Communications Commission, whatever it was. They were kind of the NFPA for communications, and so we had those documents, and the fire service loved it. I mean, the fire chiefs loved it. So I got that changed, and I got that changed because the first thing I did was write to every fire chief I knew and say, what don't you like about ISO coming into grade your community? And the first thing was, it's too much work. It's too much work. I got to lend them, you got to, and we can't be bouncing back between the NFPA and ISO. And the other thing, the ISO grading system is based on structural firefighting. It's not, you get no points for rubbish fires or car fires, response to that. You get nothing for EMS. You get nothing, and fire prevention is a big part of it. So I made everybody understand what the ISO grading system was. And I think that helped, immensely. And I enjoyed that, but it just got to be too much. They even let me, when I was going to retire the first time, I said, I'm moving to where my grandkids are in Arizona. And they said, oh, good, do it from your house. And I said, the 40 hours a week, Monday to Friday, checking it. I thought, you don't have to do that anymore. He says, keep what you're doing and check in with us. And I forget the vice president. I said, you just call him and tell him what you're doing. They didn't want me to leave. And then I did that for a year at home, and it was good. And I was picking and choosing, but that was something else that I never thought I had the capability to do. But it was the other people. I just coordinated everything. When you talk to a fire protection engineer from the University of Maryland, and you talk to actuarial people about numbers of firefighters responding to. Last thing I'll tell you about the ISO, and this is the absolute fact, and they have every piece of data, that the three most important things to a fire department for structural firefighting is staffing is 1. Number 2 is training. That's 2. And 3 is deployment. How long and how many it takes to get to that structure on fire. And you could look at the numbers. The fire department can have everything, but be lacking in manpower, not going to get a good grade because there's so many points involved with manpower, staffing. They have all the data to prove, and like the NFPA did, and like all the testing they did. 3 guys are better than 2, or 3 firefighters are better than 2. 4 is better than 3. 5 is better than 4. 6. They did all these tests. Well, we knew that going in. I met with Shapeberger when he was the head of the IAFF, and he hated us at the beginning, but by the time I left, he loved us because our data was better than his. We could prove beyond a reasonable doubt that 4 is better than. You didn't have to do any testing. Just look at the data we have. We have 20 years of data, showing fire departments. So he kind of fell in love with us for a while. But it's true. Training was a big deal. And then, of course, how long it took you to get there. And so many fire departments, the urban sprawl had started. People living in the city, counties becoming enormous, hundreds, thousands of houses being built, and forgetting about fire protection. And as soon as you have a house or any structure more than 5 miles from a firehouse, this was an insurance no-no. If your house was more than 5 miles from any fire station, you automatically go into that class 10 because their data shows more than 5 miles. By the time the fire department gets there, it's going to be a pile of rubble. Beyond what any scientist will tell you, they know that from the data. They can look at how long a fire truck got there and how many miles they traveled and how big the check was when they put that fire out. That's really how you look at it. So we awakened a lot of counties that, hey, you better start building fire stations. And it still goes on. I mean, it still goes on. Insurers would call and say, hey, listen, Montgomery County just building 2,000 houses. And he said, you better go tell them that there's 2/3 of them are more than 5 miles from a firehouse. So the insurance industry wanted to protect it. So things like that, I thought that was pretty good that I think we helped the fire service immensely, especially out west, the Western Fire Chiefs Association. I work with them almost daily. Great bunch of fire chiefs. They were well thought out on everything they did. They weren't too enamored with ISO, but by the time I left, we were bosom buddies. I knew them all. They invited me to all their workshops. I sat down with them, answered questions. Went to all the presidents' seminars and spoke. And a great bunch of people. I probably put more time and effort into the Western Fire Chiefs, those 10 states, than any place. But and the only grading I actually went on is when we decided to grade the city of New York, which was a class 2. They weren't even a class 1 with all the resources they had. But I got involved with that because it was New York City, and Sal Casano was the chief at the time, and I got to know him over some other things, and he just opened up his doors and pretty much anything you want. And with their resources, they had to build a whole new program because our computers, we couldn't put in 11,000 firemen and their staffing and whatnot. But so I got involved in that just because I knew a lot of people there, and it was helpful. It was helpful. So anyway, that's ISO. Hated to go. After I left, it wasn't really the same. They were looking for somebody that could help with sales, with the insurance industry, along with keeping the system going. And but I just hit it at the right moment. It's funny. Everything happens for a reason. I've heard that so many times. I just got to thank God that it helped me. It helped my family. I was able to get things that I had a decent pension. I wasn't going to the poorhouse, but just working with them was a real eye opener. I actually had jobs offered after I left, but I was done. I did a little consulting. City of Phoenix called me. They were class 2, wanted to get to a class 1, and Kara Cockenbaum, I think her name was. She had done a lot of favors for me when I was working there, helped my career. And I told her, she used to call me anytime. I went back for just because they were good to me, and I went back and I helped them out, and I got their class 1, and I showed them the mistakes they made and their calculations, etc. And
Yep.
so I did that a couple times. Yeah.
Yep. And again, it's been a fulfilling journey for you. That's involved, like I said, pretty much in the introduction, everything from hands-on operations and living the job yourself to teaching it in retirement. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it was the Camelot years pretty much all the way through. We got the rapid fire to get to now. Before I do that, a word from Billy Ryan and the Ryan Investigative Group. The Mike the New Haven podcast is proudly sponsored and supported by the Ryan Investigative Group. If you need an elite PI, look no further than the elite Ryan Investigative Group, which is run by retired NYPD detective Bill Ryan, a 20-year veteran of the department who served the majority of his career in the Detective Bureau, most notably in the Arson Explosion Squad. So if you need a PI to handle anything from fraud, legal services, and anything else that you might require, contact Bill at 347-417-1610. Again, 347-417-1610. Reach him at his website or the email that you see here. Again, if you need a PI, look no further than Bill Ryan and the Ryan Investigative Group, a proud supporter and sponsor of the Mike to New Haven podcast. Proud supporter indeed, and somebody who'll be back on the show, like I said, later this month. All right, so 5 hit and run questions from me, 5 hit and run answers from you, and then we will conclude as we always do. First one is, in the 5 years you spent at Rescue 1, what's the memorable moment or most memorable moment?
Oh, God, that's sort of like asking which kid is your favorite. For me, it was day one. When we signed on the air, Rescue One's in service and available. To me, that was a long road there, and I was very proud because so many people got involved with that. It was. I was sort of given Frank and I sort of given the credit, but it was amazing that we got there, and just I got on the radio and said Rescue One, ready for duty, and I'll never forget that. I was very proud of that moment.
Very well. Second question, rapid fire. Harvey Eisner taught a lot of people a lot of things. What do you think is the best lesson he taught you?
Harvey pushed me to speak. I wasn't a speaker at the beginning. I was writing articles. I had a lot to say, as you can imagine. And Harvey pushed me to get on the stage. And one of the things he said to me is, he says, just do me a favor. He goes, don't get up on that stage and talk about anything you haven't done several times, you haven't done well, or you haven't changed for the better. That was his comment to me. And I took that everywhere I went, wherever I went, and whatever I did, I made sure that I covered those things, that I did it several times, I did it well, and if I didn't do well, I changed it to do well the next time, whether it was search and rescue, whether it was whatever it was. They were his words. And he pushed me on the stage one day because I was putting together, it was kind of before Rapid Adventure, I was putting together Rescue and Trap Firefighters. It's called Rescue and Trap Disoriented Lost Firemen. And most of them were lost because they ran out of air. So he said, you got to go up on stage and do that. Nobody's doing that. He gave me a spot, put me in a big ballroom. I said, Harvey, I'm just a kid from Jersey City. And he said, no. He said, you know what? He knew. Pushed me up on the stage. I did it. The place was packed. I got a guy from the New York City, from the FDNY bagpipe band. They had a table there. They were taking donations, giving away pictures and stuff. And I said, I'll donate $100 if you walk down the middle of my class playing Amazing Grace. I'll give you a little. And he did. And when he did that, I showed pictures of headlines of newspapers about dead firemen, lost, trapped, disoriented, until he finished that and walked back out. And you know what? When you could hear a pin drop. You know what? Everybody was it was quiet. And then I started my program. And Mike, I'll tell you how long ago it was. I did my program on an overhead projector.
Bringing it
but
back.
Anyway, that was Harvey. That was Harvey. He could, maybe not me, but he could spot talent anywhere. I mean, he just had this unique feature. He knew if you came and got on a stage at the Firehouse Expo, you moved to the next level and you were going to stay there. He just had that unique feature about him. So, did I answer that question? I kind of ran away. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Third question, rapid fire. Fire that changed your approach to command as an officer.
Obviously, I have to say 9/11 because there's no answers to a lot that would happen. But to a lesser amount, I was a young fireman, Engine 20, fire and Onyx Chemical, kind of in a residential area on Granite Street. The first two companies were at a second alarm already downtown. We were the first two on a second alarm. It went from, they said, we had a lot of guys, and it was two-story building, a three-story building with giant tanks of unknown chemicals, 3 stories high, with no covers on them and catwalks above them. And the guy said, and this is going to go back to know your area. It wasn't my area, but it was still a small city. I should have known. And he said it was just alcohol fumes burning. We got up there with an inch and a half line because it was that far back. Lieutenant Jack Duffy was a lieutenant. Got up on the catwalk. The guy was with me got low on air. I didn't put mine on right away, so he went down to change his bottle. Jack went down to hump a little more hose up the metal stairs. And when Jack went down, there was an explosion, and there were probably 30, 35 of us in the building when this tank let go. And my thought was get the hell out of here. But just as I thought to get the hell out of there, the fireman came through the roof. He was dangling over his vat on fire. Kenny Dredden. He was the captain engine 9. I didn't know it at the time. And I had the inch and a half in my hand. and I had to make a split-second decision, and I stayed, and I just shot the straight stream on his body, and they got him out. He was only in the fire, for I don't even know how long. It seemed like a half an hour to me, but it was only really maybe a minute. And that straight stream is on him. And they pulled him out. I dropped the line. I followed it. And I don't remember to this day how I got out, but I remember seeing the back of a battalion chief's coat, and with this stuff lit up on it. And I tackled him. And I was the last guy. They thought everybody was out, because back then there was no real system. And they didn't know I was even in there until I tackled this guy. I mean, because the 29 guys went to the hospital, so it was chaos outside. The lieutenant from this company, captain from this company, 3 guys. It was just chaos, and they thought everybody was out. And they didn't realize what happened. And I almost lost my job. But from that, I decided there had to be a better way. There had to be a better way, and I didn't know what it was. It was only one radio to each company at the time. I didn't have a radio. And I pushed really hard when they started talking about, the union started talking about getting everybody a radio. I went crazy with trying to get that done. But I just said to myself, if I ever get in a position, this is going to change. This has to change. And it did somewhat. It did somewhat. It was before, writing your name down on a piece of paper or on a piece of plastic on the rig. It was before, you hung your tag on it. It was way before that, but it really changed my outlook on. I had said to myself, boy, if I ever get in a position and I'm in with a white helmet, it'll be different. I will know who goes in the building. I will know when he comes. I just said that to myself over and over again after that, after a period of time, because it just anything else that could have happened, it would have been I would have been a funeral.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
At one point, my throat and my lungs got so screwed up that the doctor in Jersey City said to me, he goes, your career might be over. I had 2 little kids in a new house, and it was, you talk about a traumatic event telling me that. But St. Elizabeth and I went out there they took care of my lungs, and I came back after a few months, but that changed, and it was when I get to that spot, so maybe it goes back to what you asked me about leaving the rescue. I think subconsciously I needed to get to a spot where I could make the changes I thought were necessary. If you can understand that.
Yeah.
But that was the fire. That was the fire. It needed to be more coordinated. It needed everything. It needed everything. We were the luckiest fire department in the world. Because things lesser than that happened to other fire departments that turned out to be funerals. Like a Worcester or a Charleston. But anyway, so that's the answer to that question. Quick, not quick.
That's fine.
Yeah.
It happens in the rapid fire. The rapid fire is truly never rapid, so it's fine. It's kind of tongue in cheek at this point to say it. I don't care as long as I get a good answer, which you are providing. 4th question, rapid fire, second to last one. Favorite Firehouse Expo memory?
What was that? I'm sorry.
Favorite Firehouse Expo memory?
Oh boy. Geez. I guess the first memory was Harvey pushing me out. Before that, I was coordinating hands-on training and kind of overwhelmed with me helping put together a program for John Norman or Mike Smith out of Washington D.C. I mean, every budding superstar or was a superstar. I had access to. So, I think the other one was. More recent, I did a lot and never remembered or didn't pay attention to what I did. And at some point in time, about 2 years ago, they anointed me with being put into the Firehouse Hall of Fame. And there's only about 12 or 13 people in there. And I didn't realize when Pete Matthews put together my history, I didn't realize because all the stuff I was doing was fun. I mean, it was a circus atmosphere sometimes, as you can imagine. 6,000, 7,000. I think the last year before they booted Harvey out, there were nearly 10,000 people going to Baltimore. And then, somebody got an idea to, change it into something else and it bombed. But I think going into the Hall of Fame and if I can, being pushed into a room and having guys listen and guys call me and say, can you come and do that here? So those two things I probably equally. I can give you the worst was I talked to Harvey hours
Not the
before.
worst.
But anyway, that was the flip side of that was like I said, I talked to Harvey. I was flying home. He was having surgery. I was flying home to be with him, and he passed away that night. But anyway.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah. He died way too soon. Way too soon.
Oh.
And it was terrible when he passed away. I remember that. That was about 11, 12, almost 12 years ago now. In the last question, rapid fire, what do you miss most about the fire service?
It's going to sound nuts. When I came back from Vietnam, as bad as it was, I got addicted to adrenaline, the adrenaline rush.
You and I both. I didn't go to Vietnam, but I like the adrenaline rush too.
So people are shooting at you, and when I was flying, I was doing these. We got shot at every day. But anyway, the adrenaline rush. It really clears your mind and it kind of makes you make the right moves. But so I kind of missed that. I missed the excitement of it. I missed the camaraderie. Every time I go back, and I'll be back this Friday. Every time I go back, the first place I go is a firehouse for coffee. I need to sit around that coffee table and just listen. If you can believe I can sit and listen, I can. But eventually some guy will say, "Hey, what was it like when you were here?" Because a lot of the firehouses, I know maybe one person, but it's just sitting around and listen. I love listening to the stories. So they're probably the two things. I miss the adrenaline. I miss the excitement. I miss the guys, the real truthful, meaningful brotherhood. And like I said, when I get in Friday morning, by 10 o'clock, I'll be at a firehouse drinking coffee. No doubt in my mind. And if a run comes in, the captain doesn't have a choice. I'm getting on a rig. But it just unless you really become part of that world, it's hard to explain. It's fantastic.
Absolutely.
I love every minute.
Absolutely.
Volunteer career.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, trying to get onto the career side. So we'll see what happens with that. Hopefully this is the year that I achieve that. This has been fantastic. Stick around. I'll talk to you off air. Before I say goodbye to them, Chief, if you got any shout outs to anybody you want to give, go right ahead.
Yeah. It's a little bit more than a shout out, and I sent you something. I just want everybody to know that's listening that in 2014, the state of New Jersey dedicated the New Jersey 9/11 Memorial at Liberty State Park. It's called Empty Sky. This is 2026, and it still hasn't been completed. It's missing the cladding on the outside walls. It's missing lights, and regretfully, it's missing. It's a tribute to the 746. I think I left my paperwork in the other room because I'm on another computer. The 746 New Jerseyans died in those two towers, and what's really horrific is whether they ran out of money or they ran out of ink or they ran out of etching. There's 14 people missing from that. If you walk through there, all the names are there. It's missing 14 names of the people that died in those. And it's missing what was supposed to be there, a tribute to New Jersey emergency services, emergency firefighters, cops, EMS. And it's missing, there's at least a dozen, if not more. I haven't finished that yet, but there's a dozen or more. It could be up to 20 firefighters, cops, state police, and EMS that have died of the poison at Ground Zero. And as hard as I've tried, I couldn't budge a politician to help me to get their names on, to finish building the tribute, because nobody knows the story. Nobody knows the story of how New Jersey helped New York City. And believe me, I'm not saying New York City did a huge amount of job. It's the greatest rescue in the history of the fire service, as far as I'm concerned, of the people that did get out. But have $6,000 or $7,000 to come to the shoreline and all of them get where they had to go. Hundreds of ambulances, us over there, hundreds of first responders from up and down New Jersey over there helping from day one, and not have that story told. And like 2 million people go through there, and it's an amazing piece of art. It was built by Jessica Jamraz. When you walk through this, there's a halo. When the sun comes up and when the sun goes down, it creates a halo. And when you walk through this, it's almost like heaven itself has sent its halo down. And as you walk through, it just shines and reflects off all the names. And it's been all these years, and it hasn't. Now we have a brand new governor who's aware of what's going on. And I'm hoping that she reaches out to somebody. Jessica's been battling this for years and years. I got on board with her because I heard her speak at a conference, and I was just blown away. So I had to mention that. So shout out to Jessica. I had some other names down of a couple senators that helped me, and like I said, my paperwork. And I apologize, Jessica, because my memory stinks, but. Shout out to Jessica. Shout out to the FDNY retirement division, FDNY retirement group Phoenix division. I went to some of their meetings. I'm 77 years old, and lots of times I'm not nearly the oldest person at the table. I love these guys. They're full of stories. They're the salt of the earth. They found out I played the bagpipes. They invited me to a meeting, and as guys passed away, I went to all the family funerals, played Amazing Grace, played taps on the bagpipes, or if they were veterans. And then one day, surprising to me, they made me a full member. They voted me in as a full member, which I guess was okay, but now I'm paying dues. It was free before, but I get together with one, Tom Brock runs them. He's actually from New Jersey, but he runs the organization. Fantastic bunch of guys, because once a month we get around and drink coffee and tell stories. Shout out to them. They've been very helpful to me. I've been going through some things with my daughter-in-law has cancer, and they've been very helpful in the background. And and then that's about it. The Jersey City Fire Department. Mike Waters, Joe Massington, they're the guys that made the decisions to bring me on board. I love them. Shout out to them. Brett King. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here.
Right.
I don't know if Brett told you, I did a fundraiser. I only do fundraisers now. If you call me, I have a couple programs I do fire related, and I have another program called Never Forget Means Never Forget. Mm-hmm. And it's the Jersey story of 9/11. And it encompasses everything that happened over there, from buildings falling down to what New Jersey did to help New York City. Getting through to from the past subway tube to helping with everything imaginable. The flotilla that came over. I mean, if you see some of the pictures of the cops and firemen that bleeding and hurt and CPR going, we had a guy, some of the Jersey guys did CPR on him on the boat, and he lived. And he went back to work. He made it back to work, and he came one day to our medal day and told the story. I mean, nobody even knew it. So, again, just a shout out to Brett for hooking me up. I really enjoyed this. I'm sorry. I'm sure the computer problem was mine. I'm going to go back, but I had to shut it down. And I'm fortunate that I could get on here. Okay. I can't think enough. As time goes on, especially 9/11, it just gets further and further away. And I've done my program all over the country, and anybody that calls, I'll go. There are a couple of states that have a mandatory 9/11 program in the schools. And Arizona is one of them, so I helped with the curriculum for that. And I did the scariest thing I've done speaking about 9/11. I did it with 150 fourth and fifth graders, if you can believe that. But wow. And all their parents came up to me and said it was amazing. So anyway, that's it for the shout outs. Everybody else, Dennis O'Neill and all those guys that helped me with my career. I know I'm forgetting. Mike, you have to imagine how many people are responsible for me.
Right.
I did very little on my own, sir.
Listen, that's all of us. Don't get me wrong. No feel sorry at all for that.
The guys in Worcester, when the 6 guys went down in a warehouse, we've been friends ever since then. We did 6 seminars, one for each widow. The guys from Charleston called me when the 9 went down, and I helped them. And they're the things that truly mean the brotherhood, and I just appreciate all of them. I mean, just how do you get over that? And
Right.
And I guess in some respects, I was the first step. And shout out to them. What's the different fire department? Much better. And Charleston, much, and every place I went to has called me and said, "Oh, geez, you know what? I'm glad." And I'm just happy for that. And it was never about the money. Like I said, now I need a cup of coffee in a good firehouse and a beer in your best steakhouse, and I'm happy. No, but Mike, thank you. This has been a thrill. I've been on a lot. They've all been really good, but I appreciate your patience. I can't imagine having somebody just disappear on you. So Mike, thanks. I hope someday you can maybe call me back for a shorter version, or we can get deeper into. Right now I'm just a pretty big mental health advocate, trying to help guys through.
There's people advocating in the chat, not to cut you off, for you to come back. So we'll make that happen for sure. Okay. For a part 2.
Yeah.
You're a mental health advocate.
Yeah. Any other questions out there that went unanswered that you need an answer or two?
No, I think everything was covered in there. I'm looking through the chat right now. I think everything was hit. So yeah, if you want to come back down the road, we'll make that happen. We got each other's contact information now, so we'll set that up in the future for you to come back, talk about mental health, anything you want. Yeah,
I thought I'm going back to do the St. Barnabas Burn Seminar, and it's all mental health. I don't want anybody to go through what I did. I mean, there's plenty of places to help you. But anyway, I thank you again. Thanks for your patience. It would have been a traumatic event if I couldn't get back on. I can tell you that. But thanks, Mike. This is a super program. I wish you all the best of luck. And you know what? You're an amazing person. I love this how you go about this. I feel very comfortable. Very much. Thank you.
And that's the goal. And that's the goal. No matter who you are, whether it be the PD side, the FD side, I want people to feel comfortable telling their stories. And I'm glad to hear that. If I hear that from a guest, that means I'm doing my job. So absolutely. I appreciate that. And I appreciate your time tonight. And I'm glad we were able to work through those tech problems to get you on and continue the story. And like I said, you're more than welcome back for a part 2, which will make happen at some point in the not too distant future. For those of you who tuned in tonight, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Coming up next on the Mike the New Haven podcast, as you heard me mention earlier, it's going to be Gonzo, Anthony Gonzalez, who, of course, is one of the, for those of you that watch Getting Salty, one of the co-producers alongside myself and Tank Morris. He'll be here to discuss his career in depth. Long Island guy, originally, now down in Florida as a battalion chief for Coral Springs Fire Department. And we'll document everything that he's been able to do over the course of his involvement in the fire service. So looking forward to that. And like I said, just to remind you guys, after this Friday, there's going to be 2 weeks where there's no shows because of my current job. I'm on the rotation of different shifts for 6 weeks. So I got 2 weeks coming up on the 4 to 12. So there'll be no shows live. I'll see if I can get you a pre-recorded one in the meantime. But in the meantime, as always, I do appreciate everybody tuning in. For those of you listening on the audio side from their 1990 album, Ritual de la Habitual, once again, Jane's Addiction, my favorite band, returns to the program. And this time they're going to play us out with No One's Leaving. In the meantime, on behalf of retired Deputy Chief Butch Cobb and all you in the audience, and of course, the great producer, Victor, I'm Mike Colón, and we will see you next time. Take care, everybody. Stay safe. I'll see you Friday.
Thank you.